Okay, I know it's been a minute since we recorded. I think the last one we did was pretty much at the beginning of the year, right, Jordan? It was like February.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
And it was
mhm,
on Demon Slayer, if I remember, right?
exactly. And
Yes.
it's been a year. It's been a year. It's been a year of trials and tribulations. I think I could say for both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those that are listening, you're probably worried like, what happened to these two? They dropped a banger episode on Demon Slayer and they just went ghost until like November. Well, recording November, so it'll probably be out like either end of November or early December by the time people are listening. So, yeah. For me personally, for those that are listening, I lost a close family member at the beginning of the year, so it's been a really tough year. While I've been, creating, I have some great ideas and I've reached out to some people for potential episodes, but I just been dealing with a lot, losing a family member, and then something else happening in my immediate family as well. So it's me supporting my family. It's been a lot of me supporting my family, making sure they're good. And really, right now, I'm in a space to make sure I'm good. I don't know if you want to speak on any of the stuff that you've been dealing with, Jordan.
Yeah. So for me, it was more of 2023 was a year of travels for me.
Mm. Hmm.
And it was also a period where I finished my bachelor degree.
Mm.
So
Oh
because I
yeah, it was
finished,
this year, eh?
yeah, it was this year. So the fact that I finished
Congratulations.
my bachelor degree, I told myself, okay, so you know what? This is fine. This is good. Now let me just reward myself. In fact, I think I have traveled to a lot of different places.
That you have. I did a
Yeah,
couple travels as well, but I didn't travel as much as you have.
well, you have some major responsibilities, right?
Yeah, it's true. You
Whereas
still,
I'm
yep.
not really tied down to anything
Bachelor life.
yet.
Bachelor life.
Yeah, bachelor life. Stop this. No, I'm not tied out to anything yet. So I've
Bachelor.
been, where have I been? Miami,
Mm.
Atlanta,
Mhm.
Colombia,
Mhm. Everywhere
and
that's hot. Equator, he's there.
yeah, and you know what? Honestly, during my experience, I've learned a lot of stuff that we take for granted here in Canada.
Mm.
And I think it was my brother who said that once you start traveling, you
Mm.
won't stop. And I think
Yeah,
that
no,
holds true.
it's true. I can definitely attest to that.
So I've been dealing with that. And then, of course, I've been also trying to understand myself on a
Mm.
deeper level. So I've been trying to understand, more importantly, my inner child.
Mm.
And that's it. So
Parenting the
so
inner
it's just a
child. Mhm.
progress, right? It's a
Right.
progress. Yeah.
Yeah. We've had some great conversations around that outside of the podcast. So I think this year has like brought I don't know if you feel the same, but I think this year and just doing this content creation together has brought us closer in a lot of ways. So um very grateful to have you in my life and I want to remind you of that once again.
Likewise, I feel the same.
All right, man. All right. So now that we cleared the air so people know what's going on, we were actually gonna wait. Um I proposed for us to wait until 2024 to release this episode, for us to record and release this episode, but you're the one who pushed for us to actually let people know. Like Jordan was like, no, the people need the content. He was like, we need to make it happen. So all of you who are excited, who are downloading the links, listen to episode, anxiously waiting, it's you guys can thank Jordan for this one. He was one like, yo, let's get this done. I think you watched like how many episodes did you watch? Like you watched like 13 episodes in like a day.
In fact, no, I watched, okay, in 24 hours, I watched actually 20, wait, 20, no, first season has 11 episode and
Mm,
second season has 12. So I
yeah.
watched 23
Woo!
in a day. Yeah.
Woo!
But as much as people can thank me, I also do want to be held accountable. I want to be
Mhm.
held accountable because the only reason why we took this long to not film is because number one, I had my graduation and I just kept traveling and I kept
Mm.
putting things aside. So again, the people, as much as you want to thank me, you can also blame me.
Mm, that's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair. So yeah, we're going to be talking about 86. We're going to be looking at men who take too much responsibility, and what we mean by that is Shinei Nouzen, the main. I would say Lena's more of the deuteragonist. I would say she's kind of like this secondary protagonist. I would say Shinei is more of the protagonist. I think we can both agree on that.
That is interesting.
You feel like the inverse?
You know what? I would agree with you actually.
Okay,
I would agree with you. Yeah. I think Shin is the main protagonist, even though you would think
Lena,
Lena is,
right?
but it's actually Shin.
Yeah, I would say Shin. It's you can toss it
You
up. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry, go on.
You know how you can tell when someone's the main character?
When?
When the
How many
support
seconds they have in the intro?
not only that, that's a good one. That's a good when wait, how many times the supporting characters say your name?
How did you
I
come
don't
up with
know.
that?
It's I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I came up with that, but it's just whenever Shin was doing something erratical, no,
Shin,
erratic.
Shin, 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 Shin,
Shin.
Shin.
I
Naruto,
never
Naruto,
heard. Yeah,
Naruto,
Naruto,
Naruto.
Naruto.
Deku, 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 Deku. You know what?
Have you noticed that the main
I
character,
never
their
noticed that.
name are always being called upon,
Eren.
always, or the
I,
supporting character always speak about the main character.
you know what? That's facts. I just always found kind of low key found it annoying.
Yeah,
I know like Mika says even like a meme when it comes to that stuff. Eren, Eren, Eren. I never thought of that until you articulate that. So you know what? That's gonna be like a metric moving forward for like anime, video games, comics, whatever it is. Like if you're the main character, everyone's talking about you.
that's true. And you know where I first developed that thinking? It was
Right.
when I was rewatching Dragon Ball when I was in
Goku.
Colombia because I was going through something, and
Right.
I just needed something to clear my mind. And
Right.
when I was watching Dragon Ball, all his adversary, who then turned friend, would always speak about how they have to match Goku. They would always
Mm,
say Goku, Goku, Goku that, Goku this.
mm,
And I'm just thinking, okay, so we definitely know that Goku is the main character, right? And that
mm.
goes
As
without
opposed to
saying,
Vegeta.
but and Vegeta, yeah. But they didn't really speak about Vegeta like that.
Exactly. That's I mean, they never said like Vegeta, Vegeta, Vegeta. You know what?
Yeah.
I never thought about that stuff until you said that. That's facts. If your name is being screamed multiple times by multiple characters, you're the main character.
Yep.
That's facts.
So
Okay.
going back to this 86 show, I personally
Hmm.
love the show.
We'll
When
get to
I
that.
love,
Get
yep,
to that. Remember, we always say that for the end. But yeah, no, I was saying how this show is right up both our alleys. Like when I was watching it, I was like, nah, Jordan needs to watch the show. Like this is right up both our alleys. This is because sometimes may enjoy a show more than you, or you may enjoy a show more than me. But this show, I was like, we're both equally like loving this series.
yeah. For me, okay, I don't know if you already prepared this question, but there was a scene that got me hooked into the show.
Okay.
Can we speak about it, or there's a program?
Is this a long point?
A bit.
Uh TLDR. Too long, didn't read it. Like make it short, and then we can always come back to it. Unless you can tie it into or else do you feel like we can tie it into the conversation?
We can save it for the end.
Okay, let's save it for then. Don't
Yeah.
bookmark it. Don't forget it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So one of the things I want to talk about in terms of Shin was this. So even like so we're talking about men who take too much responsibility. What that looks like is, and you and I have both bear responsibility when it comes to these things. We often in society we have this sort of unrealistic expectation of men to take care of everything, to do everything, to fix everything, to repair everything, to be everything, right? And so even when you look at Shin's alias, you know how like everyone in the so first of all, I'd highly recommend everyone watch the anime 86. It's like chef's kiss. Shin has his all the characters have their aliases. Even those who are watching on YouTube, you're seeing how I have a background of the different characters all have different aliases. Laughing Fox. I forgot Raiden's.
The Reaper, Undertaker.
Undertaker slash Reaper. I forgot half of them. Anyways, it's okay. But they all have different aliases at the end of the day. Cyclops, another one. And so Shin's is called the Undertaker. So it typically had, like, when you're watching a show, you're typically thinking of someone that's sort of like, a Death Reaper sort of thing, like, thinking kind of like Bleach. But no, it's more of someone that's undertaking a responsibility. So Shin is pretty much the most skilled, I think we could say pilot. That's a simple word. I'm sure they have a specific word in the 86 universe, but I'm just going to use just pilot, right? And he survived every battle against the Legion, which are a bunch of robots, zombie robots. Anime, they'll come up with some weird concepts. Scary? AI robots. It's also scary? Zombies. How about zombie AI robots? What?
Autonomous too.
Right?
Oh.
That eat your brains. What? To acclimate them. Anyways, watch it. You'll see what it's about.
You know what? I want to add something about that.
About how weird of a concept that is, or something else?
Just what I think that symbolizes.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Hit us with it.
Okay, so again, this is one of my just crazy thought on this. I think.
Put on your tinfoil hat. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so audience, listen carefully.
Let them cook.
I think that those AI simply represents the degree to which where your trauma is at. I think it represents your trauma to a certain degree.
Okay.
So okay, I want you to answer this. Who do you think has the most trauma because they survived every single battle?
Shin? Is that what you mean? Is that the nature of your question?
Exactly. So it's Shin, right?
Right.
And Shin, he is, if not the most traumatic person. He has gone through so much trauma, and he has a lot of unhealed trauma that the viewers can just see. And he's a flawed character, right?
Absolutely.
So because of his experience, he's able to hear those voices. I don't know. It's just a theory that I had. I'm just like, okay, what if those?
Well, yeah, those cons. I do agree with you. I do agree with at least the realm in which you're going, because, like, yeah, like, because, well, it's spoilers, so I don't know if whatever. If you're listening, you either watch 86 or you're gonna watch 86. If you don't want to hear this, skip to maybe like another 15 seconds. But, like, Shin nearly dies, right? Or dies. He's clinically dead, and so that's the reason why he can hear them, right? And even when you look at that, you remember there's a conversation where him and Lynn are actually talking about how he can hear the Legion, and he says, she's like, oh, like, what do you mean you hear them? I can hear their voice. She's like, what do you mean? Like, how often do you hear them? He's like, all the time, every day. There's not a moment that passes where he doesn't hear them. So even for him, he bears a responsibility of just knowing when the attacks are going to happen. When are things going to happen, which goes into the alias. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
You know what that sounds like?
Talk to me.
Schizophrenia.
Okay. Yeah.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Right? So because of that traumatic experience, that injury he had, that's a head trauma. So now, but then he was trying to reclaim it. He was trying to reclaim that experience by saying, oh, it's a superpower. When he was confronted by the Jihad Federation. The Jihad Federation, right? He says, well, no, this is my superpower, that I'm able to detect where they're at because I can hear them. But it's just interesting just how I think that there's something that symbolizes this robot that could be linked to a trauma response. That's the way.
And I mean, even when they're facing Shode or Kirie, that was addressing said trauma, right? Like their regretful thoughts of Shode and Kirie's regretful thoughts of their last moments being alive, and how that reinforces the harmful action that they commit while part of the Legion, and then also how their death affected what's her name, Frederica, and Shin, right? And how
Yeah.
they had to face that pain, right? Even Shin thought his brother's last thoughts were, "I hate you, Shin," but it was actually, "I want to protect you." But Shin didn't
Yes.
know that. He never came to terms. He never wanted to deal with those things. He just wanted to like put an end to his brother's pain, and he thought his brother still hates him, but his brother didn't hate you. Similar to Kiria, he just wanted to protect Frederica, but Frederica felt like she betrayed him by like not telling him that she's actually alive. She just in a lot of ways abandoned him because she couldn't deal with like his emotional instability at the time when he was enjoying killing all the insurrectionists for who were trying to take down the royal family, right? So yeah, no, there's a lot of they do in many ways represent they I wouldn't even say they represent that. They're based around that, if you get what I'm
They're
trying to say.
based around that, yeah. And with
Right.
Kiria, we know he was trying to protect the Empress because
Exactly.
remember that last scene, even though his head was
Mhm.
AI generated or
Mhm.
taken over by the robot,
Mhm. Yep.
he was still able to protect the Empress and push her away from the explosion.
Yep, exactly. That was his first thought, that he wanted to protect her. You're right.
Yeah.
Right? And so yeah, so even for Shin, like his things with his brother, hearing the Legion, protecting the Spearhead squadron that he's part of, he's literally the definition of the word undertaker. He is undertaking a lot of responsibility. And when you look at him, you realize that he's never learned to rely on others. He takes too much responsibility for everybody around him. Instead of sharing the responsibility and being a leader, he takes on all the responsibility, and everyone just expected to die or exist.
Hmm.
Existing until they die, and upon then they'll be part of his burden of responsibility without anyone to rely on. And with
I
Shin,
can by the way,
sorry, go
not to
on.
cut you off, but I can
Mhm.
understand that thinking. I think that
Right
in the
ahead.
beginning, yeah. So I think that in the beginning, you want to rely on other people until you're proven otherwise. So remember when he said that we all promise each other that we're going to be there for each other.
Hmm.
Shin said this, but they all died and left me.
Yes.
But remember, he never said they all died first. He just said they all left me.
Oof, that's a good
That
one.
was
Those are key words. I
powerful.
didn't even catch that. Go on.
Yeah, so
Cook.
he said, yeah, exactly. So he said they just left me. So he
Hmm.
never even taken the part that they died.
Hmm.
But his translation was
They left me behind. Yep.
they left me behind because we were then supposed to die all together.
Hmm. Hmm.
So he
Everyone leaves
took
me behind. Hmm.
everyone leaves me behind. Exactly. So imagine just for a second, you build this friendship, this bond
Hmm.
where you guys promise each other that you're gonna move on forward and you're
Hmm.
gonna live life to the fullest, only to be left behind. That's gonna scar you,
Hmm.
right?
Every
And it
time.
was Frederica, the
Hmm.
last empress, who said this, and this is why she's my favorite character. She
Really?
said,
Okay.
she's
Hit
my
'em with.
favorite. She's so weird, but that's the reason why I like her. She's my
Right.
favorite. She said this. She said this. I think the original translation was in Japanese,
Hmm.
but I think the woke movement turned the word man into just people because
She
the
said otoko.
original what
She said otoko. Otoko means man, male.
I don't my Japanese is not there yet, man. You're
Okay.
flexing
My
on
bad.
me.
My bad. My
It's not
bad.
there
My
yet.
bad. Do your thing. Do your thing. Cook.
Yeah, so what Federica said in the beginning, this is
Mm.
I think this is the original Japanese translation. She
Mm.
said a man needs three things, three purpose in life,
Mhm.
right? So the first one is to know exactly where he's from, homeland,
Mhm. Mhm.
the blood running through his vein. So this is
Mhm.
ancestor, your father, whatever the case may be.
Mm.
And the last one is the bond that you create.
Mm.
If you don't have any of those, any one, any yeah, any of those three,
Mm.
then what tends to happen is you're just going to self sabotage yourself.
Mm.
So I think that's exactly what happened in the case of Shin.
Mhm.
So because first of all, he did have uh the homeland, right? The 86, they're all from 86,
Yep.
right?
86 district. Mhm.
So number one, the condition for number one was met. Number two, it was the blood. So he was part of. How do you say his last name? Inusa?
Nozen.
Inozen, right?
No, oh no. Nozen.
Nozen.
Yeah.
So he was part of that clan, but because they all shared a common destiny,
Hmm.
you feel like you're related to that person by blood,
Hmm. Camaraderie. Hmm.
right? And then the bond comes along. So now the
True.
bond was broken with the people that you share the homeland with,
Hmm.
and you're no longer with these people. What's going to happen? Now you don't have any of this. You're
Hmm.
just going to go crazy, which is why in every single fight where death was on the table, he always smirked. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. He
It,
wanted it.
he was so happy. I was just
Hmm.
like, oh, this guy's interesting.
He wanted to be the first one to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you could see that. What's what I'm looking for? You could see that exponentially increase, the urgency for that exponentially increased within him once he thought um, Lena died. In the first great offensive by the Legion, where they
Yes.
seemingly wiped out Side Magnolia. Well, I mean they did, but they didn't kill everybody. Um, you saw how like he was like, oh, if Lena's gone, then like this is the one person I reached out to carry on my will after I'm potentially gone because I'm expecting to die and I'm low-key hoping to die. And so eventually, I hope that it's her, but that she's gone. So then there's nothing left for me to live for. My brother's gone. There's nothing left for me to live for. And my friends, the rest of Spearhead Squadron, Raiden, Theo, what's her name? I can't remember everybody's names. Oh yeah, Snow Empress, Snow Witch. There
No
we go. That
Empress,
was the
yeah.
other one.
But don't
Um,
forget, remember, he also does give the gun to the last Empress to say that if anything happens to me,
exactly.
I want you to shoot me. So I just like his character development, how
Yes.
he starts to trust people. Because
Hmm.
remember, he did give that responsibility to Lena,
Yep.
but then he gave it to someone very, I would say she's wise for her age, but to a
Frederica.
certain degree, she can also be immature,
Yep.
Federica.
Hmm.
But he gave her the gun.
Yep.
So that was interesting. But my bad. Continue your point.
Yeah. The only thing I just want to say is just how he never learned to rely on people, and also what we also haven't talked about, which you only saw before they confronted the Morpho, when Raiden had that conversation with Shin about him being more suicidal and more
Mhm.
closed off than before, despite them knowing each other for 4+ years. So, side little bit of background knowledge about Shin is that he had been part of, I think, 2 to 3 squads before he joined the Spearheads. So he survived quite a bit of time. And yet still, sorry about that, yet still he hasn't learned to rely on Raiden like that. He hasn't learned to
Yeah.
open up. He's just like, Raiden's eventually gonna lead me to, so what's the point? And so
Can I ask you something, if you
go
don't
ahead.
mind?
Mhm.
Why do you think he feels the need to take that many responsibility?
I think you were just you said it when we were messaging last night. No bliss oblige. So, or another version of it is, to whom much is given, much is expected. So
Hmm.
Shin has a lot of gifts, right? And another version of that is, with great power comes with great responsibility. So he is the most powerful. Like, he's the most skilled fighter. In fact, like, even the Legion referred to him, if I remember correctly, as Belegar. Belegar is one of the aliases of Odin, and Odin has the all-seeing eye. And what does Shin have? Technically an all-seeing eye. He can hear the Legion, like he knows where they're coming from.
Hmm.
So because of that, he's the most skilled and the most capable, and as such, and the highest level of survival rate among everybody. And because of that, people rely on him the most. And because people rely on him the most, he has to take on more responsibility, especially since, like, who else can cover his role besides him? No one really. And because he's just been doing this for so long, he doesn't know how to not do that, right? And you see that you can even say in some of our modern society, some men who, they'll say, I want a woman that can be there for me, but you may not know how to receive her because you spent so much of your time taking care of the woman that you're with. And when I say taking care of, I'm not talking about in the sense of protection and providing like the typical hegemonic expectation of the hegemonic patriarchal expectation of men in society. I mean more so the notion of the unhealthy notion of happy wife, happy life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where her happiness, her emotions, how she feels, what she wants to do, her moods, even though women go through like I don't know the research on this. I don't so don't take me take what I say with a grain of salt, but women I think go through the amount of hormones women go through in a day, we go through it in a month. And yet still there's this expectation of happy wife, happy life, right? You're supposed to just deny yourself, right? We have a culture of where what is it? I had it written down somewhere. Essentially, like chivalry has become I don't know what like simping and worshiping of women. Um, self sacrifice, which is a an aspect of manhood and masculinity and fatherhood and being a husband has become self denial. Uh, uh, and we just have like these notions where men are supposed to just deny everything and who they are about themselves to appease her because she's pretty and wonderful and perfect and she just has to exist and you have to prove that you're not a monster to her. You have to prove that you're a good person. And in the meantime, to do that, you have to do everything for her. You have to deny yourself. You have to worship her as if she's like some sort of goddess that came out of the sky and you're just lucky to have her, right? And you can see that with the way and to tie back into Shin, you see how Shin has never learned to rely on people. He's always doing the most, doing the most for everybody, even to the point where he's denying himself. A great example of him denying himself. So you remember after they defeated Shore, the Morpho?
Yeah.
No, he wasn't a Morpho. I forgot what he was. Whatever Shore was, his brother. You remember how like they were just on their journey, doing
He,
their
Shep, I think it's Shepherd or Shephead or Shepherd. It's
Shepherd. No, okay,
Shepherd,
so
right?
shepherds are whole brain people who can manage the legion.
Yeah.
But there was like I forgot the machine that he was in. I remember
Oh, the
Kitty
machine. Okay.
yeah. I remember showed I can't remember the machine Shode was in. I guess because it
Mm.
wasn't as big of a deal compared to like Kitty. Like his machine was literally like he can wipe out all of humanity by himself, right? He was a
Mhm.
real threat. So I remember he was called the Morpho. But anyways, you remember how after they beat Troy, they were just on like a cross-checking adventure. It was just nothing bad happened. You're like, oh my gosh, everyone's alive and everyone's happy. You
Mhm.
remember how when there was that point where the Legion just suddenly like appeared and he just cut the wire and like created a landfall and like he went to go fight the Legion by himself?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of a man who takes too much responsibility, a man who doesn't know how to scale back. As much as we have this conversation of women who like coddle and take care of men all the time, too much,
Mhm.
sometimes too much. Men are also doing the same thing. It's more not less so nurturing, but too much responsibility. You're not
I,
responsible
I
for her
I I
emotions.
I have a question to ask you.
Go ahead, hit me with it.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying in relative to a relationship,
Hmm.
right? Because you spoke a lot about the relationship
Hmm.
aspect, how
Right,
men behave when they're in a relationship with a woman per
right.
se,
In an unhealthy fashion. Hmm.
unhealthy fashion, yes. But would you say that there is also some benefit to it, along as well as some negative in the context of
Hmm.
how do I say this?
Being too
Society.
responsible.
Society, exactly, society. So for example, one of the reason why certain society thrive is because they're under the leadership of a great man who takes that much responsibility,
Right.
right? So would you say that there's some benefit? If so, what are they? And if there isn't, again, what are those negative aspects of taking that much responsibility as a man, not just in
That's
a relationship,
mhm.
just from a broader
No,
societal
that's a great question.
aspect.
So that's the layers. So I'm going to do my best to break it down. So in terms of Shin, you saw how like that point where he cut the cord, he climbed the mountain, he started fighting Legion by himself. He didn't
Yeah.
delegate any tasks to anybody. So that's the difference between someone who's a leader and someone who takes too much responsibility. A leader delegates tasks.
Hmm.
A leader doesn't take everything on themselves. They take on the most responsibility, but not all the responsibility. Those are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Shin took all the responsibility. He took on all the responsibility at that moment. He took on all the responsibility. Remember that point where when the first great offensive began and they were fighting, they were taking down the Legion in terms of his whole squad. And then at one point, he just kept going forward. He
Yeah.
just like literally left everybody. He was in a trance. And Frederico was like, yo, like, wake up. Remember that point?
Yep.
That's too much responsibility. Instead of having your whole team go with you forward, which there was no need, they actually backed up. And up until that point, he was being a great leader. He was looking for the opportunity that he took on once again too much responsibility. Also, low-key trying to self-delete, trying to manage the words I use because this is going on YouTube. That's where a lot of that stuff comes from. So even being in a relationship, whether it's your mom or coming from a male perspective, relationship with your mom or sisters or your girlfriend, wife, whatever is, are you taking all the responsibility? Are you trying to manage her emotions, her feelings, her temperaments, everything she wants, everything she desires, how she feels in the day, how she goes to sleep, how she wakes up, how she's eating?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with having some sort of influence or involvement with those things. But if you're picking out her meal, bro, I don't know if that's healthy for you, right? Like that's what you want to do for the rest of your life. What happens if you have kids? Now you're just managing everyone's meal and your own? That's how you burn yourself out, right? But I would say
Would you also
Mhm.
argue, sorry to cut you off there, but would you also argue that even though he was trying to self delete, he understood that he can limit the amount of death or casualty if he did that?
Well, then once again, that goes into delegating tasks because you don't have to do that by
Okay.
yourself, right? You can
But
accomplish
every
things.
time he's done it,
Mhm.
it's worked. Every time he's done it, it's worked, and they actually
But how
limit
for
casualty.
so but here that's a great point. So I'm going to do my best to answer this and also maintain my bookmark thought.
Hmm.
Um yeah, maintain my bookmark thought, which is that something along that. Okay, so um there's a difference between thriving and survival. Up until at that point where he was part of Sagmento and fighting for them, yeah, he probably had to do some of those things because that's what you had to do to survive, right? You didn't
Hmm.
have as reliable teammates, right? You didn't have as reliable of a squad, but now you have a squad that's on your team, people battle tested,
Hmm.
reliable veterans. These are people that you can rely upon as opposed to even like the extra team members that they added to the squadron from the Giad Federacy were
Hmm.
battle tested. They didn't just give him like novices, they gave him like their best fighters, right? A class
Hmm.
that is of the same race as Raiden. Raiden's from like a warrior class, fun little fact. And so they're from the same class and they're known for being able to be battle hardened, battle tested, and they're able to operate autonomously on their own. So this is the best crew that for him to have to accomplish his goals. But what's the point of having those? What's the point of having that squad if you're not really going to use them, right? So yes, you can do those things, but you're trying to thrive or you're trying to survive. Up until that point, it was all about survival, being, in a very heavily discriminatory country that really just wants you to die, right? As opposed to a country that wants you to live, which is why, for me, people heard your favorite character is Frederica. Mine is Ernst. Well, I have two favorite characters, but one of them is Ernst. Ernst Zimmerman. Yo, that's my dogs. That's my guy.
We're gonna
And then
get to him. We're
also
going
Lena.
to get to
Yeah,
him.
we're gonna get
I
to him.
have something to pick with that guy, but we're gonna
Okay,
get
we'll
to
get
him.
to that. We'll get to
Yeah.
that. And so going back, I remember my other bookmark point. So there is good things that come from men who take a lot of responsibility because when they're in a healthy environment, and I've seen this with one of my friends, when they're in a healthy environment, it allows you to prosper because you know how to take responsibility. You know how to take initiative, right? It's just that you have to, manage how much responsibility you take, but you know how to take responsibility. So there are good things. There's nothing there's nothing inherently bad, but um, when you are in a term I would like to use when you're in a unhealthy relationship, and a lot of this stuff comes from being in an unhealthy relationship with your mom. There's
Hmm.
a term I'd like to bring into the conversation, which is a son husband, where you have the responsibility of your mom's husband, aka like dad, right? But you're
Hmm.
treated like the son. So you don't really get the respect. You're still infantilized and treated like a child, but at the same time, you're expected to help pay the bills. You're expected to fix things. You're expected to repair things. However, your mom doesn't respect you as like she would like if she had a husband that she really respected. And so you know you don't know how to be a boyfriend. You know how to be a son husband. You know how to take responsibility and too much responsibility for the women in your life and other people, but you don't demand or command the same respect because you're used to being disrespected. You just don't realize it. So a lot of
Mhm.
those things have to be realized as a man, as a person, that you're taking too much responsibility for things and people that aren't respecting you. So in that respect, it's the reason why it was great that Shin left um, Sad Magnolia. Right? They did not respect him. In certain respect, he was a son husband. Yeah, yeah. Lead the squad. Everyone knew who he was. Everybody, unlike all the other processors, everyone knew who Shin was, the Undertaker. But did they respect him? Did they appreciate him as like the star veteran fighter who's been single handedly keeping the Legion at bay from taking over their country? What happened a year? What was it like? Was it a year after when the first Great Offensive happened? I think it was even less. I think like a few months after he left, that's when the first Great Offensive happened. They're like, oh, Balaguer's gone, Shin's gone. Yo, he was our biggest threat. He's gone. Yo, let's go take over Sac Magnolia. Right? They didn't respect him or appreciate what he who and what he was and what he brought to the country until he was gone. He was and then, like I said, starting to respect a son husband. And that's where a lot of those things come from. Looking at your relationships, right? Just like we're talking about, like Legion, the representation of lingering trauma and regrets. We have to take a look at how our relationships are affecting the way we navigate life moving forward. Even for me, right? I've had a lot of son husband situations with my own mom, right? And some of the family members, some of the older women family members in my life, right? I'll come in. I'm very handy, so I'll come in and fix and repair things, but am I treated like the man I am? I'm not 15 anymore. I'm still treated like a child, right? So it's up to us to have those boundaries. You can do as much as you want. You can, try as hard as you want. But like I said, just like Shin and Sag Magnolia, there's nothing that Shin could do for his patria, his country, his fatherland, because that's where he was born. He wasn't born in the Giad Empire. His
Mhm.
parents were. There's nothing that he could do for Sag Magnolia that will ever respect him. Nothing ever. He had to leave, and so that goes the same thing for us men, right? There's certain women that will never respect you. It could be your mom, it could be your sister, it could be your cousin. The only thing that you can really do is to separate yourself. But does not mean that Shin said no to helping Sac Magnolia when they got invaded afterwards. He was even just like, is there anything that we can remember? Like remember that when they found out about like his quote unquote, as you said, I think the easiest way to put it is the superpower of knowing
Mhm.
where the Legion were. When he was about to map out Sag Magnolia, like, no, don't even bother with them. He still cares about them. It's his patriot as much as like they don't appreciate him or like him, period, for being a colored. Um, it's still his patriot, it's still his fatherland, but they don't respect him there. So it's up to him to separate his country parental relationship with them. Nothing's gonna come from it the way that it was. He'll just die and they'll still be like, he's just filthy colored.
Do you think when he left Sag Mongolia, how do you say it? Is it Mongolia?
San Magnolia. The reason I know
Magnolia.
it's San Magnolia because like let me pull up Kai for real quick because like Kai his sword is called Magnolia Eclair. It's like it's written on the sword somewhere. I don't know if I can get it. It's like somewhere.
Do you
You're gonna
think
see
that when he first left that country, it was his way? It was the first step to realize
actualization.
his actualization. Do you think?
Absolutely right. The
Okay.
first step to breaking away from from these type of unhealthy relationships where you're not respected as a man is to separate, right? Unless like obviously if you're like married and like you have kids, maybe look into couples therapy or something like that, or if you have a girlfriend, therapy if she's open to it, right? But really and truly, a lot of these unhealthy relationships that we've learned to foster, especially as men, sometimes separation is the only thing that works. Not to say all the time. Context, things depend. But if you're expecting it to change, if you love your mom or your sister or your cousins or your girlfriend or your fiance or your wife hard enough for her to change, it's not going to happen because people only change when they have to.
And it was really interesting because when he left uh that country,
Mhm.
you can see within the other characters they felt extremely uneasy that they wanted to go back, and that's a
You're talking about the
perfect.
rest of the Spearhead Squadron, right?
Yeah. So
Hmm.
that was a perfect representation of how a toxic relationship looks like. Of you returning to that relationship because that is what you know.
Comfortable.
That is what you're comfortable with.
Preach.
You don't know exactly what's potentially out there for you.
You're
So do
right.
you remember when they said? Do you remember especially what was it? What's her name? Snow Devil? Is this Snow Devil?
Snow Witch. I think it's
Or
Snow Witch.
Snow Witch, yeah,
Yeah.
Snow Witch. So she would say something
Emma.
to the effect, yeah.
Hmm.
So she would say something to the effect of, "Oh, now we don't have any food. It's just a matter of time."
Hmm.
So it was just that realization that set in that, okay, we decided to seek this freedom. Now what?
You're right.
This is pretty uncomfortable.
Exactly. And you make a really good point. And that's what it means to venture into the uncomfortable. I often tell people like the thing that you're looking for is in the discomfort. Not to say you could should be like um miserable. That's different. Or suffer. Well, I mean, suffering kind of comes from them, but you have to wrestle and expose yourself to the uncomfortable because if they stayed at Sag Magnolia, they would have absolutely died, right? But because they ventured into the unknown, the wilderness, the the path that has no the the land that has no path to it, right?
Hmm.
Land unventured. That's what allowed them to fall into Giad Federacy, where they're actually treated very well. And even then, when they got there, they were uncomfortable. They only understood which Ernst called out. They only used to the treatment that they had from Sag Magnolia. But because they ventured into the unknown, that's what allowed them to come to a country that actually values and appreciates their skills and actually like wants them to succeed and not just be warriors, right? But if they didn't leave Sag Magnolia after defeating Shore, they would have gone back to that same suffrage. They probably would have been killed on site too, right? Because that's what the I don't know if you know this, but like so Sag Magnolia has that big like wall around it. On the
Hmm.
bottom, there's landmines in case the 86 try to revolt, but they
Hmm.
also have like turrets at the top,
Hmm.
like machine guns to kill the 86 in case they try to revolt at the top of the Grand Mur. And so Grand Mur means like for those that don't know French who aren't listening from Montreal or Toronto or Newfoundland, Grand Mur literally means Great Wall in French. Segmentally, everything about it is French. It's supposed to represent. It's supposed to be a allegory of France during World War II, essentially. For those that don't know, and like yeah, it's supposed to be like Germany, if I remember correctly. But anyways,
Yeah, it reminds me of the Weimar Republic. Yeah, the flag of, yeah, yeah.
there we go, right? But regardless, they wouldn't have found Giad, Giad Confederacy if they never ventured into the unknown. And sometimes it is hard because you don't know what's going to come from it, right? You don't know what's going to come from stepping into the unknown. But if you never step into the unknown, you'll keep receiving the same treatment. And Sag Magnolia, the only outcome for them was death.
I'm going to speak on that.
Hmm.
So one of the things, and I do agree with you. One thing I do like about Ernest is he said something very powerful to his
Hmm.
official. His
Right.
official, remember when his official said, "Well, we can use these kids as operators. These
Yep.
guys are brilliant."
Operators, that was the term. Go on.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then, well, Ernest was like, "No, we're not going to do that." And he's like, "Why not? They're amazing at it." And then, Ernest was like, "Well, that's because that's all they know, right?
Yep.
That's the reason why they're so good at it."
Yep.
But then they also never had the experience to try something else. If
Yep.
they have the opportunity to try something else and then they go back to doing what they're great at, he can accept that.
Hmm.
But if they did not have the opportunity to go out to the unknown and potentially try something that they like,
Hmm.
then he was not okay with that. And we could kind of see that. Do you remember the first time they all tried their first activity?
Yes. You're talking about during the
Theo,
montage of them living like life and everything. Hmm.
yeah, normal life. So Theo was drawing whatnot. If you
Hmm.
follow the show, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And then they went back to that, I wouldn't say toxic way, but they just went back to what they were comfortable with. Do you remember?
Right.
They went back to war. But do
Yes.
you
They wanted to go back.
remember When they defeated the morph, they went back to that first lifestyle, that first activity that they tried.
You're talking about Morph in Kitty, or you're talking about Shode?
Kitty.
Okay, yeah.
Do you remember that? When they went back to the normal lifestyle the second time, Theo went back to his drawing.
Yes.
You remember? The Snow
Yeah.
Witch went back to the bakery.
Yes.
So they all went back to the lifestyle that they're first comfortable with. But then they
Yes.
were still uncomfortable at the time. But they
Yes.
just didn't know that it's just a matter of time that you need to allow for you to be comfortable at it
You need to be. You need to allow yourself to be uncomfortable with the unknown.
with the unknown.
You need to be uncomfortable and being uncomfortable. There we go.
But what I do like, and I think this was a powerful imagery, is the fact that I'll give you a really good example. So when
Hmm.
Theo first tried drawing, right,
Hmm.
and then he went back to war because that's exactly what he was comfortable with.
Hmm.
And then once he got peace again, he went back to the first activity that he loved. So
Hmm.
he didn't try. You don't see him trying something else that
Hmm.
he also potentially like, probably
Hmm.
gaming or sports or whatever. He went back
Yep.
to drawing.
Yep.
So for me, the way I interpret that message was, yes, life was peaceful, but they just weren't ready yet.
I would actually add to that. So one of the things. So I don't know if you remember before they went to go face off against Shode. Shin's brother is Theo throughout his art book. So as much as he was able to use art to get him by, and this goes even into Shin too. Another aspect that I wanted to comment on Shin is that Theo was ready to throw away his art. He's like, because he even said like, I know I could be the one dying next. And he just throw out his art book. It was a lot easier for him to deny and abandon who he is, right, or who he
Mhm.
was. And even Shin, you saw how he was so accepting of Fido's death. The robot dog,
Yep.
because everyone leaves me, so of course Fido will leave me, right? This is just what they were all coming. This is what a lot of them were coming to terms with. Like, what's the point of thinking of a future? Which is what Ernst was just like. When the war's over, I want you guys to have a successful future. And they're like, when the war's over, I never thought about that. I never put myself in a space of thinking of the future. And that's the main reason why I love Ernst, is because he is literally the embodiment of the term patria. So patria means, um a little translation of that would be, the fatherland. Like, he's
Mhm.
literally like the father of the fatherland. He's like this all-encompassing, good, benevolent father that one would want, right? Like, so he's giving them everything that they want, but he's always putting stipulations and expectation for them to push themselves on. Even when they're in the last mission, when they're about to face Kira in the form of the Morpho, he's like, I know you guys will succeed. I know you guys will, but here's another stipulation for your mission. You have to survive and come back. Because for them, it's a lot easier for them to
That
go on the
it
mission and
was
just
such
die.
a when he said, first of all, I just want to say that when he reminded me of you. He reminded me of you in the sense that when we had that conversation on Vinland Saga of what a leadership was,
Hmm.
you said something to that effect. You said a leader will always give you an alternative option for a better life,
Mm.
right? And then not only that, I also wanted to speak that one thing about Ernest,
Mm.
one thing about Ernest that's very, very, very interesting is that his idea.
His ideals.
Can we get into it or not yet?
I do want to. We were supposed to do an episode on Lena and Ernst. That's so I don't want to go all into Ernst
Okay.
yet. But if it's something you want to touch on, go ahead.
No, okay, not yet. So it kind of reminds me of the relationship of, and I wanted to add this. It reminds me of a relationship of, let's say you just got out of a toxic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you come across a really amazing guy who treated you right, but you just weren't ready to receive it,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're going to go back to the ex because you're just not ready for that. You're not
Mm-hmm.
ready to receive it.
Yep.
And then once things messes up again with your ex,
Mm-hmm.
then you somehow come back to the guy who treated you amazing and you
Mm-hmm.
try to work things out and you finally give him a chance. Funny
Mhm.
enough, that's exactly one of my experience that happened to me probably like back in 2018 or 2019, whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. That's the whole interaction of what that reminded me of. So for example, when you had these kids, they would try these things out,
Mhm.
but then they would go back to the thing that could potentially kill them. When
Mhm.
Ernest gave them a lifestyle that was filled with a lot of security,
Mhm.
like they didn't have to go back, but they
Yep.
chose to because remember you would also see I forgot the girl with the with the red hair, her name.
It's
It
not
starts
hard
with
to
a
tell.
E, right?
I'll find it. Go on. Keep going.
So you would see them, they would have trigger fingers. Have you
Mhm.
noticed that? They would have trigger
Yes.
fingers.
Yes.
So they would have a lot of that so that because that's what they're used to. They said remember when they were like, what am I kidding, like what am I doing here, trying out beautiful dresses, making pie, reading books about military,
Couldn't.
drawing. Yeah,
Couldn't.
yeah, I heard it. So doing all of that, like what are we doing here? This
Mhm.
is I'm just not happy. So then they just went back to that lifestyle
Mhm.
of knowing what they know.
Mhm.
But I do like Ernest. He laid it out there. He said, "Hey, listen, I just want you to know. I want you to know.
Mhm.
Yes, you have this lifestyle because you're so used to it,
Mhm.
but you also have this lifestyle." And that just reminded me of you of our conversation on leadership
Mm.
when we were speaking of Vinland Saga. I don't know if you remember that, but when he first said that, I was reminded of your talking point. I'm like, oh, this sounds just like Eb.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, Ernst reminds me of like the type of father I want to be. And what I try to emulate, I try to give respect to what all the kids that I have want, but at the same time, I put stipulations. I do my best to lead by example in a sense of being learning to be comfortable in the discomfort and seeing and going to untreaded territory because you will never really get the change that you're looking for by just doing the same things over and over that our parents or siblings or the older people in our lives have done or generations before us, right? You're never going to get the things that you're looking for. You have to step into unknown territories for the things that you want. And so I really love that about Ernst. Even though he would like acknowledge what they want, he'd be okay, yeah, that's fine, but you're not going to just get what you want. You have to do more than just that. And that's yeah, I couldn't ask for more from a character. Like I just love how he was, even just the way he was just like, yeah, no, we're gonna adopt the 86, and I'll be the first to do it. They're not gonna just come to our country. We're gonna adopt them. They're gonna be part of our country. The other thing I also liked about 86, which I just want to hint to, is how typically you'll see like country A is bad because racism, discrimination. Country B is good because they don't have discrimination and racism. I loved how there was more nuances to the countries than you saw in other series. So Giat Confederacy, they have a lot of mixed interrelationships. That's what I'm looking for. Mixed relationships. However,
When you speak about nuance, just explain more about that.
so that's what I'm going at. So as much as like they have like when you look at segment silver hair or not, silver hair, silver eyes or out. Like even Emma, right? She has like I think it's Emma. She has like silver hair and blue eyes. Like no, you're not part of them. You're not part of the master race, bro. You need to get out, right?
Hmm.
And so they only have like really one type of people. When you look at the
And she was
Confederacy,
close enough.
yeah, but it wasn't close. It wasn't. You have to be that, or you're not in. Like she had
Yeah.
blue eyes, not good enough. So when you're looking at the Giad Confederacy, you saw everyone was mixed and everyone's interracial and all that stuff. They were really for the 86. They're pro rights and all the good stuff. However, with them, they have a discrimination against the previous royal families, right? No
Hmm.
matter what rank you're on, and that's the reason why Eugene couldn't go to school. People don't know Eugene Rance, the guy, the silver guy, the guy with silver hair, the part of the I forgot what they're called. I can't remember the races are called. It's been a minute since I watched the show.
Is it Alba?
Alba, there we go.
Alba.
Who's
Okay.
the Alba who also had glasses and had a little sister. The reason why he wasn't able to go to school is because the school system refused to accept him because he's of royalty. He'd be discriminated against him and his sister. But He also can't work because they don't like the country doesn't like the previous royal family because they're the ones, the royal families, because they're the ones who created the Legion. So everyone doesn't like them. Even though his family wasn't of high royal caliber, they
Hmm.
still had some level of royalty. And so that's the reason why he ends up being in this interim space where he can't go to school, he can't get a job. So everything for him to do is to join the military, which is where he dies, right? So
Yeah.
even in a country as a Giad confederacy, they're not perfect. They have their flaws, and I like that, right? As opposed to just, oh, Sagmento is bad because discrimination. Giad doesn't discriminate, so therefore they're good. No, every country has its issues that they have to work through, and I really like that about the series.
You know, on a side note, Japan tends to have this very unhealthy relationship with the West.
Go
They
on.
seem to be obsessed with the idea of, on the topic of race, the topic of monarchy. I don't know. It's just
That's a
the
whole different. I
it's
know
a,
you're a
I
whole
know. Just
different
on a side
conversation.
note, it's just I've just been noticing this. And it's a bit weird. Anyways, speaking about Ernest, I want to speak about Ernest for a second.
Go
So
on.
Ernest, there was a period where he did piss me off,
Okay.
and he
I suspect
violated.
where, but go on.
Take a guess. I want you to take a guess.
I'm gonna destroy the country if my kids don't come home.
Yes. How did you know? How did you know? I want to hear your reasoning behind this. How did you know?
Because it could come off as coordinated in a way too ideal in a real world. And you love your Code Geass, just nothing good comes from anything idealistic.
So this guy Ernest
Mm,
violated so many principle with that saying, and
hmm
it got me pissed off. So you're telling me, so first of all, he violated this idea of utilitarianism, right? So you choose the best course of action that will benefit the greater good.
hmm
So because of if these five kids die,
hmm
then the whole country must die also. What? Ebby, come on, man. Come on.
I loved it. I loved it. I
How
loved it. No, but
do
I
you
loved it.
love something like that?
No,
Come
I loved it.
on, man.
I loved it. No, but I loved it in the sense of he's also because that's another thing I loved about Ernest. He wasn't just challenging his kids because he'd say like, "Yo, these are my kids. Like I'm gonna take care of them." He also was challenging his country, and that's the reason why I like the aspect. I could see how like that's a crazy thing. That's an outlandish, out of pocket thing to say. You're absolutely right. I'm with you on that. But I like the fact that he challenged his country in a sense of just being okay with being slightly. He was challenging his country, the Giad Confederacy, not just from being different from Sag Magnolia, but he's like, we have to be better than Sag Magnolia. That's the reason why I love that. He wasn't just challenging his kids, he challenged everybody that was around him. He wasn't
On
okay with
ideals.
complacency.
So,
Sorry?
so one. Okay, so this is where I had a problem with him because
Hmm.
for him, ideals
Hmm.
meant way more was way more important
Hmm.
than the world itself.
Hmm.
His ideals, the concept of justice.
Hmm.
I think it was the uncle of Lena who says ideals are just
Yo,
ideals. They're
Jerome?
not. Huh?
Jerome. Uncle Jerome.
Uncle Jerome. He says ideals are just ideals. They're not meant to be attainable. And I think that's true to a certain degree. I think that ideals, yes, are just ideals,
Hmm.
which that we can act on them. We can
Hmm.
act on them, but it doesn't mean that there needs to that we have to attain them,
Hmm.
right? Because we're always going to have injustice in the world.
Hmm.
There's never been a period in human history where everywhere in the world was just 100% justice.
Hmm.
The very fact that it depends on your belief again, whether you're
Hmm.
Christian or Muslim or Jews, whatever.
Hmm.
I'm a Christian. So again, with my ideals, I know I'm kind of being a hypocrite here, but with my ideals here, we sinned. The world became unjust the very moment we ate the apple.
Hmm.
The very moment. So
Hmm.
there is no justice to begin with. It was just pure injustice ever since.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm looking at this guy
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, does he not understand these are just ideals? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
you can maintain a certain degree of it,
Mm-hmm.
but trying to enforce them 100%
Mm-hmm.
and not being flexible,
Mm-hmm.
because remember, he was not compromising.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was not being flexible with the ideals. That's where it becomes dangerous.
No, no,
Because
I agree.
remember, remember,
Mm-hmm.
a person's ideal. Sometimes people can think that they're doing the right thing, but then
Mm-hmm.
you need someone else to come along and say, "No, wait, wait, hold on, wait a
The
minute. What are
road to
you?
hell
What
is
you're doing
paved
is
with good
wrong."
intentions. Mm-hmm.
Hmm?
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
It's paid to good attention. Exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
one person good attention might be another person bad attention.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I remember when I was in a relation. Actually, no, I'll give you a more recent example.
Mm-hmm.
You always told me this. You said, Jordan, let the woman make her own decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though you really have good intention for them,
Mm-hmm.
you're taking that away from them.
Their autonomy. Mm-hmm.
You're taking away their autonomy for them. And then it just won't manifest in itself. It won't manifest itself in a way that is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one example. So when
Right.
I was just looking at Ernest, I'm just like, man, you know what? I honor him in the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he's a good person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's a wonderful leader. But like with every other person and everybody, we're all flawed. He just had a
So I
little bit
think
of,
no,
yeah.
I just want to add. I think Ernest makes for a great patriot and father, but not for the best politician. I think that's one of the things you want to get at. Correct me if I'm wrong.
He was too honest.
So that's what I mean. Like he makes for a great patriot, like a good
Yeah.
like conception of the fatherland, right? Like in terms of like if we're looking at a country's ideals and having that person embody those ideals, he is that. Does he make for the best politician? Probably not.
Yeah. No, it was just an inside joke that.
No, no, you're absolutely right. You know, it's just like I knew. I was like, even for me, I was like, this man's wild. He's about to burn the whole country. But I don't know if
Yeah.
you know this. So with Jerome and Ernst, they were actually made to contrast each other. I don't know if you knew that.
And that makes sense. That makes absolutely sense. Um, I don't want to get too philosophical here, but I'm just gonna say, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, just to put simply, just to give people a perspective. So Jerome, Lena's uncle, was a man who abandoned his ideals for practicality and what the masses want. Ernst denied practicality and actually revolutionized his country through his ideals, and in certain ways, I guess you could say denies the masses of what they want. He's like, no, no, we're not going to be complacent. We have to be better. So, yeah, in a lot of ways, they're made to contrast each other. And you know, I could understand, and I could see both people's perspective. In fact, sorry, Jerome. Actually, I think you might follow my line of thinking as we both love the anime series Code Geass. Jerome made me think of Sneisel because they both said something similar. The countries as people, not the ideals,
Mhm.
not the politicians. The countries as people, and if the people want this, and that's what the people. That's what we need to do to give them what they want.
Remember what he said to Lena. He's like, your action is supposed to be the will of the people.
Bingo.
So that is true. Would you now again? Let me just assess those both characters and tell me if you agree with it or not. I think that Jerome, to a certain degree, is a realist in a
Absolutely.
sense. Yeah, so he's a realist in the sense that he thinks that one must act and not just be full of ideas.
Mm,
Because I think that he saw with, I think his brother, it was his
hmm.
brother, right? Leno's
Yep.
father,
Hmm.
saw with his brother just how ideals were pointless if you're not going to act on it. Because remember, his brother
He
didn't go to
spoke
war until the,
facts. Yep. No, he spoke facts. Go on.
yeah, the brother didn't go into war until that last minute, until Jerome kind of shook him up and
Hmm.
said, "Hey, listen, you have all these ideals. That's wonderful. That's great."
But what
And
are
it
you
was
doing?
Carl, but it was Karl Marx. Karl Marx said this because remember, these anime, the writer's brilliant on this, and the writer really did
The
their history
mangaka is
on
a
it.
woman, by the way. Fun little fact, and she read a lot of war
Really,
books. Yeah, she. I if you read the book, I think you and I were talking about it when I was looking into some of the books for the series. So I read All Quiet on the Western Front, which has played a big role. If you read All Quiet on the Western Front, you'll see all the connections to 86.
No
Oh,
wonder,
sorry,
because
go on.
no,
Mhm,
the okay, so the writer knows her history. And I
mhm,
say that to say that when Jerome said that, for
mhm,
example, ideas are just ideas, they're not meant to be attainable. One must act on those ideas. That's exactly what Karl Marx said
mhm,
to the German philosopher Hegel, because Hegel was just an idealist.
mhm.
Something exactly what Ernest represented.
Yeah.
Ernest is simply an idealist.
Mhm.
Right? But then again, he actually does act on his
Yeah,
ideas.
he revolutionized the country.
He does act
Yeah.
on his
So I
ideas.
and that's the reason I can understand both perspectives, someone denying their ideals for the sake of duty to the country and slash the patria, the country, the fatherland,
Yeah.
um, and someone who decided to revamp, revolutionize the patria into something better because it was not true to his values. So
Hmm.
it's very interesting to see on both sides, and I can understand, empathize on both. Like Jerome was like the Alba that I dislike the least and I can empathize with, despite his discriminatory and racist decision making. At the end of the day, you could see how he generally did not hate the 86. He was just doing his job, right? And he didn't see a way of changing it, which we all have those things, those spaces in our life where we're doing a job, and it's not true to who we are. We're just doing it because we have to, our family needs it, or we're told to, or other people need us to hold this role. It fully makes sense,
I
and I
would
get it.
disagree. I would disagree you on that. I
Okay.
think that Jerome, okay,
Hmm.
Jerome is a very complex and interesting character. I think that ever since
Hmm.
Lena joined, as ever since she became a major
Hmm.
to the 86,
As a handler.
yeah, as a handler one, I think that Jerome
Hmm.
was purposely acting like that towards Lena
Hmm.
so that she could realize
Hmm.
exactly what she must do.
That's an interesting
Because
perspective. Like
yeah,
passing on his will.
because remember, Jerome has dealt with a Lena like person, his
Mm,
brother.
right.
So he saw exactly how it's going to end up like if she doesn't really take very calculated risk.
Right.
Jerome understands this. So he was kind of pushing her. She he wanted to wake
Okay.
her up.
I
He
think we're.
wanted
I think. Go on. Go on.
so yeah, so he wanted to wake her up, but he did it in a way that's so subtle that did not challenge or control her.
Yes, I
So
think
yeah,
he wanted her to be a vessel for what he wanted as well. He just couldn't achieve it. I think that's what we're both
exactly.
getting
He
at.
he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it himself. His brother couldn't really do it because, of course, he
Yeah.
died in that war.
Yeah.
So he saw that he sees this potential in her. He said, "Okay, you know what? Wow, she's challenging me. She realized that actually I need her for my promotion. Do you remember
Hmm.
that one example? And not
Hmm.
only that, I also want her to grow as a person.
Hmm.
Remember, Jerome. I truly think that Jerome does not hate the 86. I truly
No. Yeah.
believe
No.
that
He doesn't.
he
He
doesn't.
doesn't.
I think that he wants to do what's right, and I think that it runs in. I'm not going to say his family because he's part of the royal family,
Hmm.
but it runs in the blood of him, his brother, and Lena that they want to do what's right.
Yes.
And I think that the
That
death
sense of
of his brother
morality.
took a toll on him
Hmm.
and exposed that idea that okay, I want to fulfill the wish of my brother,
Hmm.
and what he probably wanted
Hmm.
was so that these people are being treated equally, or at
Yeah.
least fair, or at least have a better life. I don't know. I think that Jerome is one of those hidden gem
Hmm.
that on the surface that people just hate.
Hmm.
But if you really understand exactly his motive and what he's saying,
Hmm.
and you remember, and sometimes you remember he would push a little, and then he would
Hmm.
accept what Lena's saying. Have you noticed
Hmm.
that? He would
Yes,
just
that's true.
push a little.
Except
Now,
towards the end, of the 86, the initial 86 squadron that she was part of. Yeah, he was very much like, all right, fine. Now,
yeah,
okay.
he's like, okay, fine. I'm like, wait, okay, this guy's a good guy. I can tell.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, and even Ernst, right? Like even for him, like one of the things I wanted to we'll talk more about it, like even when he got Shin books, it wasn't just any books that he would want, which is like war books. He was like, I'm giving you cookbooks. It's a little thing. It's those little things. Like, I'm gonna give you what you want, but I'm expecting better from you. Which, as you said, Jerome did the same thing. I'm expecting better from you, right? To set a new expectation for the next generation without, as you said, explicitly saying it, but it's there. It's in the little details. So I really like that
Yeah.
about him. And
I
that's
also, yeah,
Mhm,
I just want to add this. I just want to close with this. I
mhm,
think overall, when you look at those those two characters,
mhm,
you look at Jerome, you look at Ernest.
mhm,
I think, and this is what I believe,
mhm,
I think that the person who had the best ideas and the best leadership and the best mindset had to be Ernest, because although Jerome was very on the practical side,
mhm,
Ernest it, Ernest did what you call praxis. So it was a mixture between ideals and practicality.
mhm.
And
What do you
that's
call
what,
that? Praxis?
yeah, you call that praxis.
Okay.
So that's what every politician must strive for,
Mhm.
like where your ideals
Match up with
correlates
your
with your
actions.
action.
Right.
Yeah, because if you just have ideals, what's the point of that? Because the point of your ideas is to act on it, right?
Mhm,
But if you just have action, but you have no ideals,
mhm.
then what do you have? You have this person who has no understanding of history, and he's just going to repeat the mess that was
Mhm.
done probably
That's
5,
true.
10, 50 years ago.
That's true.
So I think that Ernest he's an interesting character,
Mhm.
and it should he be a politician? I think that he should be more of probably a scholar, or like
Mm.
one of those lobbyists.
Right.
I don't know.
Create the
As a
policies.
yeah, creating policies or something like that. Or policy maker. I think, yeah, he definitely be a policy maker.
He
But
definitely put
as
in
a
a lot of policies for the country, so especially in
yeah,
relation to the 86. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
do you know if he's a lawyer? Was he a lawyer?
No, he was just like he was a military member. He's part of the military.
Okay, okay, because that country
Yeah.
turned out to be very, very good
Yes,
somehow,
exactly. Because he took
but not
points. He had a
developed.
lot of time.
It wasn't really developed well,
Exactly.
but
It was centered around expansion.
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't want to go too much on in terms of Ernst and Jerome too much. That's another episode we can, expand more of them, expand more about them. But the thing I liked about Ernst is that he made Shin reflect on the fact that he didn't see himself as human. Like, it was only like Shin only really started to come to terms with his issues when he was in Gied, when he was in a healthy space where he was just like, when people were asking like, what do you like? No one in Sagmai Noah is asking him like what he's gonna live for. But that was one of the first conversations he had to start asking, like, what do you want out of life? I was after this war, what do you want out of life? And he didn't really have an answer because he didn't know, he couldn't imagine his life where he's not needed. He needed to be needed. As much as like we're seeing, like I said, we're talking about son husbands and men who take too much responsibility. And as much as we can feel bad for those who suffer from that mindset, that way of thinking, including me at one point, and many other men I know, boys too, is that you also don't know how to not be needed. So what do I mean by that? I mean that
Keep
if I
talk your talk. You're speaking facts right now.
thank you. Yeah, let me cook, as they like to say. I'm trying to get hit with it. I'm 34, but like I'm trying to use the younger people terms. Yeah,
I'm listening.
yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, if I brought like a
You also don't
fully
know. You don't know
fully
when you're not needed.
balanced, emotionally intelligent woman who's very understanding and caring and can handle her own shit into your life, I brought a woman like that in your life, you wouldn't know how to handle it.
Oh my gosh, that is
The
so
the only
true. I
the only
agree.
thing you're used to dysfunctional women. For Shin, the only thing he's used to is a dysfunctional country. The moment we bring him into stability, he doesn't know what to do. That's when his PTSD really started to kick in. He's like, I don't know what to do with myself. I need to find more responsibility. And at the same time, not trust the country, because he knows if his old country, if they knew about, his abilities, they would have dissected him. So he doesn't feel safe. By the same time, he wants to do more in that country. By the same time, he is fearful of discovering more for himself because he's never had to do that. You
Can I
only know how to take care of women. And
can I
okay,
ask you, not to can I ask you
go
something about that?
ahead.
Okay, so we say that the reason why they go back is because that's what they know, right? That's what they're used to. That's what they're
Right,
comfortable,
right.
right? But if the environment is safe, because if the environment is safe,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Why would they be scared of that? Knowing that the unknown is not death and it's not scary because the environment is safe.
I see. That's a leading question. I know you
Do
know.
you
I
see
know
what I'm
you.
trying to say?
No, for sure. Um.
Yeah.
So on
I
two
want to
fronts.
understand this part.
So on two fronts, it's background noise, by the way. Um. On two fronts, it's background noise on your end, by the way.
Yeah.
Um. On two fronts, it's what's the words I'm looking for? Yeah, on two fronts, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, and I want to go back into what I'm comfortable with. That's safe for me. The misery loves company, right? We know that saying. Literally that. I want to go back to where I'm miserable because that's where I know how to manage and do things. I don't know how to operate outside of this role. In the case of Shin, I don't know how to. Sorry, you're about to say something, Jordan?
I was gonna say, but there's nothing to operate on because
There's nothing to
there's
operate on. Mhm.
yeah. So I'll give you a good example. With misery, there's constant crying, sadness, anger.
Exactly. The
So
ups
you're
and downs,
always
the
exact.
highs
So
and
you're
lows.
always on survival. You're always on survival.
Bingo.
But now let's say you remove all of that.
Hmm.
You're just a calm body of water. There's nothing to operate on. What are you fearful knowing that there's nothing that's going to come that's going to make you react in a fearful, sad, and scared way?
Peace is scary. I'll say that
Uh,
again for those that are in the back.
Explain your reasoning.
Peace is scary. So if you're just used to chaos, peace is terrifying because it's silent. Peace is every day is the same, right? We're talking about a healthy relationship between a man and a woman or your mom, whatever it is. If I brought you a peaceful woman or a peaceful person, you wouldn't know how to receive it because you're just so used to chaos. You need the ups and downs and the chaos and the hormones and the stress and the anxiety and the sweating and the arguing and as I like to call the verbal UFC combat. That's what your norm is. And something this guy's cracking up. And unless it's that, you don't know what to do with yourself. You don't know how to manage, right? Shin's used to sleeping on actually no, Shin's used to putting his books inside a recycled fridge. I don't know if you noticed that. Like his bookshelf is a fridge.
Hmm.
Now he has an actual bookshelf. What? Right? Even if you look at all their rooms, it's very they use the term Spartan. So Spartan in the sense of like actual Spartans, like they didn't really have much decorations because they're always ready to go off on war. They never learned to just live for themselves. They're just used to living to fight, living, surviving until the next day. So now you're at a space where you don't have to, you don't have to survive anymore. You're allowed to thrive. So Theo never thought of buying more pencils, buying more art utensils beyond a pencil. Wait, art kit? What?
And it's also the idea of not being attached to the place.
Exactly,
Because
because
remember, that's what the
yep,
Empress said, right?
exactly.
So that was interesting when I noticed that. Okay, so I okay, so I want to say this
Hmm.
because I just want to pick your brain here for a second.
Hmm.
So if you're so used to misery,
Hmm.
because misery loves comfort,
Hmm.
why
Stay in it.
why yeah, so why would you stay there if you can go to the other place
Hmm.
that welcomes you? Because in one area you're literally stressed though. And I know
Hmm.
I'm just kind of repeating my question here, but I'm trying to get to the root cause here.
Yeah.
What do you
Vindication.
think about? What do you think? Okay, what is it about misery that makes it so comfortable? Does that
Because
make
if I
sense?
can overcome it. So a lot of us, I talked about my own
Oh,
experience.
repeat that again for the audience one more time.
It's vindication so I can overcome the misery. I want the misery so I can overcome it. So
Mm.
there's two fronts I'm going to go out. One, I'll look into the 86, but first I'm going to go on the more of the personal point first. So with regards to the personal point, right? A lot of us, and we had a conversation about it before we started the episode. I was talking about how prior to me meeting my wife Deb, I would date women who I had to prove myself that I was a normal person. I was a normal person, deserving of love, because a lot of aspects about me and my mom thought I was like this weird man child, right? Who
Mhm.
um played way too much video games, watched too much anime, and read too much comic books, even though I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Which goes in another conversation on how black men don't have control over their narrative and masculinity in media, but that's a different conversation. And just men in general, right? Like, who are we to tell women what their hobbies are? Women watch reality TV. God forbid we say anything about that, right? But anyways, so there's that aspect. So I often went towards women who I would have to kind of prove myself to. So Deb was the first woman I ever got with who was just like, yeah, no, like your sculpture are cool, bro. Actually, they're actually pretty nice. I like the art behind it. And I'm like, what? That was a hard thing for me to initially receive. And that's the reason why like I had to do a lot of like self-affirmations to remind myself I'm deserving to be with them, because I never had that before. Just that I had it from like female friends, but it's not the same thing as like, like someone that you're going to be creating a family with. And so that's something I had to actively work towards and be and put myself in a space to receive it. The other point to that is, so going back on the 86, a lot of them, like Sag Magnolia, represents their trauma, right? Um, so like I forgot the exact words that's on Emma's back, but it's something about her being a whore. Because so like when she was in the camp, like the internment camps, because she has the hair of the Alba, she received a lot of abuse, even though she wasn't, and she was sent there. She was the closest thing as to the people that the 86 hated, the colored 86 hated. Um, Shin ripped apart from his family. Last thing he heard from his brother, that his brother hated him and that he had to be sent to be conscripted after his parents died. Raiden was pulled away from like the pastor that took care of him. Theo lost the one parental figure that cared about him, that was also an Alba. Kurena was like abused in a variety of ways, right? So they all went through something, and so that's their attachment. That's what they're used to. They're used to that pain. Anything that's not that pain is weird. And so even for them, let's go back to that country and get the vindication that we're looking for. So what I mean by vindication, I mean I'm gonna get with a woman, like in my case, I'm gonna get with a woman who doesn't accept me for who I am, but I'm going to recreate that same negative experience I had with my mom and get her to acknowledge that that I'm worthy of love and that acceptance. Because once I get that, then I'll have conquered the pain I had growing up. But in actuality, you can't. You won't, and our parents are who they are. The only thing we can do is to move forward from those negative experiences, which is what we saw with the 86, right? You saw how like Emma was thinking like, maybe we should go back to Sag Magnolia. And then towards the end, when they heard about Sag Magnolia being attacked, you saw Ernest even say, you guys don't have to go back and help them. And they didn't fight it. They felt bad for Sag Magnolia because that is their patron, that's their original fatherland. But at the same time, they also didn't. After being in Giat for so long and creating a life for themselves and a future and setting up a future for themselves, they don't really want to go back, right? Shin too, he doesn't really want to, like he cares, and he cares about Linda even more specifically, but he doesn't really want to go back. And so even with Shin too, um, he didn't realize he was human, right? He didn't realize he has needs and urges. Uh, and so he
Yeah,
didn't
he
realize that
always
like
referred himself to a ghost.
a bingo, right? He referred to himself as a ghost of war, the Undertaker. Like even the aspect of Undertaker became more about death than undertaking a task. He was just looking for the opportunity for his life to end. So every negative experience that happened to him, he was just like, yeah, this is, and it goes back into the relationships and whatnot. This is what I deserve. When she says this hurtful thing to me, this is what I deserve. When my mom says this to me, this is what I deserve. When my sister says this thing to me, this is what I deserve. When my cousin, whatever women you have unhealthy relationships with, as a son husband, a man who takes too much responsibility, this is what I deserve. This is what you're telling yourself.
I want to say something. So it's I never heard it like that. That's a really cool perspective. For me, when I have to distance myself from someone because, you know, we probably went, we probably argued or something, and then I come back and then I find out that because I took a day or two off and I made it clear that, at the time of the argument that, hey, let's just put a pause or not work things out or something, but I'm gonna come back. And then they don't, after a day or two passes by, and then they don't want to work things out, and then they just want to stay friends or whatever the case may be. It's weird because then I tell myself, yep, this is what I deserve.
There
I'm
we
like,
go.
damn. I'm like, yep, I deserve that because, yeah, of the reasons you stated.
Because we
Yeah.
don't have that self-worth, right? And it's the same thing with Shin. Like, look at how much negative experience he's went through, the traumas and loss of family. His brother saying, like, this is like literally the one role model he had looking up to was like, this is your fault. I'm going to die. It's entirely your fault. And really, it was just showing just not knowing how to deal with the burden of responsibility that he's dealing with. And so Shin took that on as a child. As children, we're egotistical. So Shin absolutely believed that this is all my fault, and I have to take responsibility for our entire Nouzen family. I have to take responsibility for the 80 for the Spearhead Squadron. I have to take responsibility for the 86th district. I have to take responsibility for Sag Magnolia, and then I also have to take responsibility for keeping the Legion at bay.
Now, I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this. Do you think that this problem is concerns on man or just a certain type of man? Because the reason why I asked that is because you don't see that with Raiden. Raiden doesn't act like that. Oh, right. I need to take all this responsibility. Theo does not act like that. Kitty, what was his name? Kitty?
Kurena?
The guy who the knight of the last empress.
Oh, Kiria.
Kiria. So
yeah.
Kiria didn't act like Kiria didn't act like he had to take over this entire responsibility. His only responsibility was the empress. It was I need to make sure that the empress was safe. It wasn't that I need to make sure that the empress advisor is safe, the empress chef is safe. You see what I'm trying to say? To the extent that the Undertaker had to do. The Undertaker literally took everybody that he associated himself with under his wing.
Yeah, I agree.
But Kiria didn't do that. Kiria was yeah.
No, so I was just gonna say, so I disagree with Kiria because that's exactly where a lot of his mental stability broke down, and you could see that with both Kiria and Shin. They both had points where their stoicism, their sense of bravado and manhood and stoicism broke down. So with Kiria, he actually didn't, because if he took on the role of just protecting Frederica, he wouldn't have like started to have a mental breakdown from killing people. He went from protecting her to trying to fight off everybody who was trying to take down the Gied Empire. And then that's when he started to like lose his sense of mental stability. Because he went from just protecting, because if you could protect, if your role is just a protector, you can find someone, you can find a bunker and protect her. But you actively start to fight against the insurrectionists and the revolutionaries. And then that slowly started to have a negative impact on his mind. Even in terms of Frederica, she kind of took too much responsibility for Kiria's decision. Like at the end of the day, as much as like she feels like she wasn't there for him enough, at the end of the day, he made that choice And that's also what we have to understand when we look at men who take too much responsibility. As much as like I have a masculinist frame of looking at things, and I empathize very much with men and try to work with men and boys to work through their issues. At the end of the day, just like we were talking about, when it comes to talking, you talking with women, even for me too, with regards to my wife, is like we have to let people make their decisions. We have to let women
Yes.
make their own decisions. We have to let men make their own decisions, and anyone in between, right? You can't force someone to do something good, right? Like even when it came to, one could say Ernst forced the kids. He kept them from going back into the military, but one, he got them to do counseling, and then two, he let them choose what they wanted to do outside of that. And then from there, he's like, you guys have to get trained to join the military. He didn't want them to go in initially, which is true because he wanted to protect them, right? That's what also means as a father, you want to protect your kids. But he was just like, you guys have to do these things. These are steps that you guys have to take for your own success.
Okay,
Oh,
so in response to Kidia first, I
mm-hmm,
think I think that's a bit different, and let me explain why. Because there's this old saying that, of course, the more you kill, the
mm-hmm.
more that
The easier it
that
gets.
not no not that, but the more
Mm,
you kill, the more souls are the more so that person's soul is going to haunt you,
mm,
right? So of course, if you're in a war, have
mm-hmm.
you noticed that it's those who do crazy amount of killing are never right in the head?
Yeah, absolutely. It
So
takes a toll on you.
I think that is probably just a byproduct of the war
Mm-hmm,
than of the environment necessarily of itself. So let me explain by that. What I mean by that is, for example, with Sheen,
mm-hmm,
right, is because he went through that experience with his brother,
mm-hmm,
that he felt that he was unwanted by his brother.
mm-hmm,
That was just trauma based right there. That
mm-hmm.
laid the foundation
Agreed.
for how his brain is going to develop,
Yeah,
because that was extremely heavy.
yeah.
Whereas for Sheen, it
You mean
looked like
for Kiria?
no, for sorry, yeah, for Kidia,
Mm-hmm,
it looked like it happened in the battlefield.
mm,
You see what I'm trying to say?
mm-hmm,
So it wasn't, hey, so this is the only person I'm gonna protect,
mm-hmm,
right? And because of that, I developed some level of trauma based on
mm-hmm.
that. It
Right.
was no, I just went to war and I killed a lot of people and I turned crazy. You know what I mean?
I killed
You
a
know
lot of
what I
people that
mean?
went crazy. I love it. I love how you trivialize his experience. But yeah, no,
I
you
wasn't
make some
trying
good
to
points from
trip.
that. It's like I just went crazy. It's just, oh,
Yeah, yeah, the guy just went crazy, and
probably
it's
did.
the same thing with Sheen, right?
Mm.
Sheen, the minute he got on that battlefield, he killed a lot of people. He turned batshit crazy. So I don't know. I think that the craziness is just a byproduct of the war itself.
Okay,
That
that's
these
fair.
that they're just going crazy because of the
They're
amount
just
of people
losing
they're
it. They're just
killing.
losing their shit left and
Yeah,
right.
they're just losing their shit. And then I think Sheen went crazier because now you factor in the brother. He was searching for the brother,
Right.
right? So can you imagine every single battle he just turned absolutely crazy?
Hmm.
That is that is what a prerequisite to trauma will do to you,
Yeah, you'll lose
because
it.
he had the trauma. He already had the trauma. Now
You'll
he's
go back
exposed to
to where you
more
were.
trauma. Yeah, now he's exposed to another level of trauma. You see
Yep.
what I'm saying? So he had the trauma with his brother. Now he has the trauma of war, and now he has the trauma of losing his friends. Whereas Kidia, okay, it doesn't really go too much into his life story, his
Right.
background,
Hmm.
but he really mainly just developed the trauma in the war. When
Yeah.
he,
Okay, that's fair.
yeah, that's my point.
Yeah. And I would say maybe if anything, Frederica took too much responsibility for his actions. Right. Women who are too nurturing.
Yes. So
Who.
before we continue on to the next subject, because I know we do speak a lot about the men issue,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Because that's, of course, that's one of the central subject of our podcast. But I also wanted, I again, if you know anything about this or have any experience on this, I
Hmm.
really do want to hear your opinion on this.
Hmm.
But what do you make of Frederica behavior, where instead of the man taking too much responsibility,
Hmm.
now you have the woman taking too
Hmm.
much responsibility? How does that look, and how does that unfold?
I wouldn't so much use the word responsibility. I think like that the concept of responsibility, not to say women are not responsible, that's not what I'm saying, but when we think of responsibility, we tend to connect it to men, right? Like even when we're looking at men suffering, the main thing
Yeah.
we're telling men is to like take responsibility and John Henry, he's a person who like literally worked himself to this, a concept, and work through your issues, like solve it yourself, right? Be
Yeah.
like to solve problems, which is typically what men in leadership and things like that, and men tend to be tied to concept of leadership. um you're expected to fix things. To fix things means to take responsibility. It means to take responsibility, to find the problem and find a solution to solve it, right? So when it comes to women, I would say just too nurturing and caring, right? The feminine is very loving, very supportive, very caring, typically, and everyone's relationship dynamic with other people, it can differ.
Hmm.
I'm just talking about like the overall archetypes and expectations that we have in society and heteronormative relationships and whatnot. And so we have this so for women, it's normally like the thing where you feel like if you just love him hard enough, well, for both sides it's like that, but if you love and nurture him long enough, you'll heal him. If
Hmm.
I Because I mean, like women are great healers, right? Like they like as much as like you and I have had and don't have the best relationship with our moms, I know when we were small, if we got sick, our moms would freak out, right?
Yep.
So that's the nature of what it means, like woman, like femininity and womanhood, to be loving and to be supportive and nurturing. But I think a lot of women have to realize that like you can't go into relationships being Bob the Builder. Like you can't fix him. You can't you can't nurture him into being healthy. He has to want that for himself. And
Yeah.
if he's already not doing that, he's not going to do that. And you're just going to be wasting your time. He doesn't want to do those things. You're dating a drug dealer and somehow you think you can convince him to some of my young women who I support, like who have played the fatherly mentor role. I'm talking to you guys. Dating a drug dealer and somehow you think he's going to stop selling drugs. He's already making money. Why would he change? First of all, and on top of him making money, he got you. Why would
He
he
got
change?
you like that. That's how he got you.
That's the ultimate validation. It's the same thing going back to men. Like you think that um um uh proposing to her or making her your girlfriend or marrying her will make her change. You gave her the ultimate validation for who she is. Why would she change? You want to fight for Sag Magnolia thinking that you'll change them as a country? No, if anything, you're validating how their policies work. Why would they change that? People only change if they have to. If you're giving someone what they want, or a country, in the case of the anime, or where you work, everything they want, why would they change? There's no reason to. And it's not your responsibility to change them either. They change if they want to. Your job is to just, the only thing you can't control what happens to you in life, but you can control how you react. You may not like the country you're in, or in terms of 86, or maybe in real life, you know, like the province you're in or the state you're in or whatever it is. The only thing you can do is control how you react. Maybe you need to move. Maybe you need to go elsewhere. Right? Maybe you need to navigate things differently in your workplace or in life, right? That's the only thing you can do. But as long as you feel like, oh, as long as I'm here, maybe things will change. No, it won't, because they have no reason to. You never gave them a reason to change. Why would they change?
That's a
Right?
good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so this even makes me think of like even like Shin's experience, which you and I are going to be starting to get into the comic book side of things. It reminds me of Captain America's journey in the MCU, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in terms of going from self denial to self actualization. His whole thing was this, the patriot, once again, like Captain America, like in terms of definition, like I'm doing this for the greater good for people, not necessarily so much the US, but the concept what the US stands for and just doing right by others. But eventually it's like, what do you want for you? Right? That's what a lot of us men can sometimes forget is, sometimes manhood and chivalry becomes servitude. Like I said, chivalry has warped into worshiping. Um, Self-sacrifice and honor has become self-denial, and manhood has become servitude. But we're not servants. Neither are women either. We're all people, and we all deserve to be actualized, heard, understood, appreciated, and valued. But if you don't put that expectation for others, just like Shin, none of those things will change. You'll just keep suffering the same cycles.
Mhm. Now, so you're basically speaking to the effect of boundaries, right?
Hmm.
Now, I think that establishing healthy boundary is the right way to do it. But there's also, and this
Boundaries
may
mean
sound
nothing without consequence, by the way.
absolutely, but there's also a side to boundaries that people need to understand. So so if you come across whatever problem and you just think, oh no, 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 my boundaries, I have to leave. At the sign of every problem you face, you
Mm.
can't just leave. It depends on what the problem is, of course, right? But
Hmm.
let's just say, for example, this is just an example. Let's
Hmm.
just say it was a white lie, right?
Hmm.
And because you've had bad experience with that, you think that okay, if they're able to tell me a white lie, then this can that they could probably tell me a big lie in the future. And then you
Fair.
just and then you just cut yourself off from that person,
Hmm.
right? So it becomes sticky because if you've been through a lot of trauma,
Hmm.
right, and then you're bound again, I think that you need to establish healthy boundaries,
Agreed.
right? But if your boundaries becomes to the point where at the sign of every single minor big dangers, yes, of course, yeah, you cut that off, but every single danger, the even minor ones, every single minor danger,
Hmm.
you distance yourself because of your so-called boundaries, then it becomes tough
It becomes
because
unhealthy because it means
it
that,
really does. Yeah, continue.
sorry, at the drop of a dime you run away. That's now that's going into like territories of like attachment styles, and like in this case that's like attachment avoidant. Once again, I like to tell people
Yes.
I've had to take classes in this stuff, and especially where I've worked, I have to know these things. But I'm nowhere an expert when it comes to this stuff, and I want to
Mhm.
emphasize that if you want to learn more about this stuff, I'd suggest speaking to a professional like a therapist specifically to learn more and maybe your attachment styles. But it goes into like attachment avoidant, where every time someone you feel like someone's going to harm you based off your negative experiences in your past, in your
Yeah.
childhood, you run away at the drop of a dime. You're not creating a boundary. It is not a healthy boundary. You're running away from problems, because no relationship you'll ever have will never not have problems. All relationships have its hardships and issues. You got to work through with that person if that person wants to work on those things with you. But if every time someone does something that upsets you, that you feel like this person's like not a good person anymore, then first of all, you're probably pedestalizing them and you're not really knowing who they are. In the words of Eisen from Bleach, admiration is the greatest form of is the greatest form of is the furthest thing from understanding. Admiration is the furthest thing from understanding. So if you're admiring people to the point where you can't even process that they did something that irked you, then you have to reevaluate how you're interacting with people. One, and two, you might want
Wait,
to
wait,
get
wait.
some,
Explain more. What do you mean by that? Go more into that part.
go more into what
The
exactly.
last point you made. So you said if you're interacting with someone who no if something about Erkin.
Oh, like
If you're interacting with someone, yeah.
and the moment that like they do something that irked you, you run away because they're not living up to expectations. And yeah, you have unrealistic expectations from others. And I would also argue you are probably not living up to those expectations either.
Interesting.
So the thing, so it's very interesting. I had a conversation with a young person about this. We were talking about men, and I was telling her that us men, because we have been socialized and raised to, because we're more likely to be logical, and we're also socialized to not take into consideration our feelings and whatnot. We don't think about the fact that we have feelings. So as long as we don't realize that we have feelings, we don't realize how much our feelings are affecting our emotions.
Oh,
So
that's
our
true.
feelings are affecting our logic and way of thinking. And it's all good, Jordan. And then because of that, we tend to think our decisions are very rational, but you can never make a really rational, logical decision if you don't take your emotions into consideration. If you think they're not involved, then you're probably making a very emotional decision that you've rationalized into thinking it's a logical decision, but it's not.
That's
Sorry, you're not
deep.
being
That's
rational.
deep. That
Yeah.
is deep.
But we have to, but from even so, and I'm not, I'm when I say these things, I'm not coming from a higher than thou standpoint. I too struggle with that stuff, and I had to work on that in therapy. In fact, I'm rediscovering going back into therapy again for like I said, for my own space.
Hmm.
And so I, like, one of my things, my therapist was like, okay, but how do you feel? And I kept saying, this is what I think. Saying, no, I'm not asking what you think. How do you feel? What is the feeling you have? What's the first thing? How articulate the thing that you're feeling? Give me a word. And then we had to really work through those things. But it's something that I don't want to sound too professional about it, but I was never trained to do. I was never raised to do that.
Yeah.
That's probably a better way of doing it. And a lot of us men don't know how to do that. So what we think we're doing is not make sense. If I can just get her to, work
Understand
more,
me.
understand me, work more than we'll have to pay all these bills. Why do you have to convince her to do that?
Mm.
First of all, pardon the French, who the fuck you think you are to think you're so special that you're the special snowflake that'll just change her? Who the fuck are you? What makes you so special?
Hmm.
Right? Oh, you're gonna be she has all these traumas and issues and compounded issues from like her childhood and her whole life. Depending if she's your mom, someone that's at least probably 20 plus 2 decades older than you. You think you're the person that's gonna change her? That's crazy, bro. And that's rational, that's logical. Or
Yeah.
the girl that you're dating, or your older sister or your younger sister, you think somehow that'll change her? You think you're the special person, the special being that's going to change everything about her? That's crazy, bro. You're not that special. As a great future likes to say, you're not that special. You never were.
You hurt a lot of people's feelings with that comment.
Hey man, yo, that's part of the reason why. As much as like Nas is like my favorite artist, yo, Future has some savage lines, man. He's like, yo, you're not that special. And I love those Future memes. You're not that special. You never were. Sorry.
Oh. Well, audience, if you feel offended by that, let me just tell you that it
This
is
is
what
how
it is.
and this is how I talk all the time. But I would like to contrast things in terms of giving a healthy standpoint of healthy
Yeah.
masculinity and responsibility. Ernst, going back on Ernst, you saw how he didn't just set the tempo for the rest of the country. He led by example, but also delegated. So he's not the one
Is
who
this
trained
Ernest we're speaking of?
Ernst. Yeah, Ernst. Yeah. So he
Okay.
never, when it came to the kids doing military, he got them registered. He let the military generals handle it. He said, "This is not my job. My job is to set you up for success, but I can't do everything
That's
for you guys."
true.
Right? When it came to setting them up, like, how like Ryden got involved with a moving company, what's his name? Theo got involved with drawing. Corinna was buying clothes. He wasn't with Corinna in the store, right? He wasn't with Emma in the cooking classes. He wasn't with Ryden in the moving company.
Or even standing security secret
Exactly.
service.
Exactly. No, he's like, this is things that you guys need to figure out for yourselves. And even having the country support them in those aspects, right? He didn't get
Mhm.
involved. When it came to planning out the mission, he's like, I'm not going to plan the mission. I'm going to hear what you guys have to say. When they were going on to take on the Morpho, he's like, okay, this mission sounds good, but it sounds like you're expecting them to die. What's going on with that? That was what he think. That was his main feedback. After that, he let his country, he let his people, his fellow countrymen, manage, the whole battle, right? That's what it means to take like a healthy form of responsibility. You know how to once again delegate tasks. You're not doing everything on your own, like how Shin was, where he was just trying to take out the Morpho by himself. He didn't want to get help because he
Mhm.
was hoping him and Kirie would die. That's what a healthy form of responsibility looks like, right? Learning how to delegate tasks because you realize that you can't handle everything. And this is also coming from me too. I struggle with that too. You and I had a conversation about, delegating tasks in terms of Black Nerd Talks, right?
Yep.
I can't handle it all. And it wouldn't even be fair for you to handle it all either, right? That's what life is about, delegating tasks, even in terms of, places I've worked. It's delegating tasks. Taking it all. No one can do that. And it's not healthy. There's an African proverb. It's if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with others.
Yep, I agree. I do you think that Shane's attitude to wanting to kill himself relieves him from that responsibility of being an undertaker, and that's how self-sabotage looks like if you do not take your mental health serious.
Okay, expand on expand this on tying the Undertaker aspect and self deletion ideation to um self sabotaging. Tie it in, and then I'll be able to answer. I can't see the connection there.
You guys, yeah, okay. So we all know that first of all, Sheen wants to die, right? But he wants to
Mhm,
die for all the wrong reason. So for
mhm,
example, he wants to die because all his friend has died, and they all promised that they will essentially die together.
mhm.
So because he had this ideation, this obsessive attitude
Right.
that, hey, I need to die so I can then join my friends,
Mhm.
led to the self-sabotage part because he never took care of that mental health, he
Right. So
never
he was
treated that
constantly
trauma.
trying to harm himself because if I'm following your line of thinking, because I don't want to be here anymore, I'm going to keep creating situations to get
That
myself
will
hurt.
hurt. Exactly.
And you're asking how does that tie in together?
No, I'm asking, do you think I'm basically just asking if you agree with it.
Yeah, I would say that
Okay. Yeah, that was the whole question. Like do you see that? Do you see that as a mental health problem? Of course, but
of
yeah, it
course.
is. Yeah.
Right? So it's just like I said, like he and even when he was in that space, this was the healthiest space he's been in. Before, like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't have the right word with me right now. But Sagmagno was always sending them off on missions of most of a 0.2% return rate. So
Yeah.
he would have to look for it. He's like, you guys are just amply provided. You guys have a surplus of missions where no one's expected to survive, right? So he
They
doesn't even have
do.
to think
Yeah.
about that. Sorry?
And they do.
Right? But in the Giad Confederacy, it's a high survival rate, especially for his team.
Hmm.
In fact, he's sent in to significantly him and his fellow 86 Spearhead Squadrons are sent to spike up the survival rate. So now it's like, well, what do I do? Right. So once again, I'll put you as a man in a healthy situation with a woman. You'll find, and once again, when you are rationalizing your emotional thoughts, but you don't realize your emotional thoughts, you'll logic your way into self sabotaging. You'll think of ways that you think will make sense to sabotage the relationships that you're developing so that it runs to again reinforce, oh, I don't deserve this. I knew it.
Yep. And in the process, you risk hurting the person
Yep.
that gave you that space to express yourself. It's I don't know. It's interesting because I don't want to speak about this, but I kind of find myself in that position. I don't want to go too much into details, but
For sure. No.
I really do find myself in that position. It's where, whoa, okay, so I have the space
Hmm.
that is healthy,
Hmm.
but because I've been
Programmed in a lot of ways. Hmm.
programmed in a way to accept, a space
Shit.
that is not healthy,
Hmm.
now I've become very, very suspicious. I start to question this healthy space,
Because it's
right?
quiet, right? I if
It's
you
very
don't,
quiet.
that's what I was
But
about to
but
say.
but
Mhm.
but this space right now, I'm just questioning. I'm just like, is it really safe?
That's exactly what's scary. Because the rest of you know what was the case before.
Oh, right there, boom. It shows you. It shows you. It
Hmm.
shows you. And because
The
you've
case
been in that
before,
space
you
so
knew
many
the
times,
chaos is familiar. Sorry, go on.
yeah, because you've been in that space so often, you know how to navigate. You know
Hmm.
what to do. You know
Hmm.
their set. You know their mindset. You know the way they think
Hmm.
and whatnot. But when it's healthy, it's
What do I do?
okay. Okay. It's this is the analogy I'm gonna give. Okay, let me just not move this glass too far. Okay. Oh wait, no. Let me push it back. Or I'm gonna break it.
Mm.
But that's the way I'm viewing it.
Hmm.
It's okay. This is too safe.
Hmm.
what if I just move? It's like I'm walking on eggshell,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
You're
Be,
walking on. I would give you a better
but I'm
analogy.
listen. So it's like I'm walking on eggshell, but I'm really not.
I would say it's like walking in unfamiliar terrain and you're expecting there to be landmines,
Yes. Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
but there's no landmines. But
There's
because
no
you've
landmine
been
at all, but
none,
I'm just walking
why is it
cautious.
everywhere I step, it's safe? There must be something up on the horizon. It must be a big landmine. This was gonna blow off my leg. I know it. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
Survival, survival, right?
And it's not until uh the paranoid aspect comes in, and before you even go all the way through, you just turn back. You just said, you know what, I can't deal with this no more.
Bingo,
Yes, I can't deal with this.
bingo.
So I'm at a position where I'm walking through the field. I'm thinking there's landmines everywhere,
Hmm.
everywhere. But there's
Hmm.
someone across that's telling me, hey, listen, you can do it.
Hmm.
Reassuring me along the way, every step of the way.
Hmm.
But for some reason, I'm not receiving those words.
Hmm. Well, it
Does that
takes
make
time, and
sense?
also I would also like to emphasize to our listeners that like you're also deciding to make the steps. You may be walking slow, which is fine, but you have to make the decision to make the steps. You can never force someone to take steps,
Absolutely.
and you want to, and that's what it really comes down to, right? And I know, like I said, I fully understand that. Like, even for me, when my wife was improving my sense of fashion, I felt like she was trying to change me because that's what I was used to. No, it's true. Like you're laughing, but it was a real thing. Like I was just like, "What do you mean? What do you mean it can't wear a Superman t-shirt?" It's like,
uh,
well, it's not stylish.
my bad for laughing at that, man.
No, it's fine. I don't take it personally, but that's what it was. And it took time for me to realize she had to really be like, bro. Deb didn't say bro though. That's like how I'm articulating. She's like, I'm not trying to change you. And I'm like, it took me some time to realize that and to accept that. Now my sense of fashion is like swaggy. Don't you see I even got waves for those who are watching? I even got
Yeah.
weight like I have a different drip now, but I didn't know how to receive what my wife was trying to do for me because my prior experiences were women who were trying to fix me. There's something wrong with him. He's too weird. He's too nerdy.
Mm.
But I had to receive what she's saying. You can't make someone receive anything. You can't convince anybody of something.
That's interesting because I think with me is more they want me to open up more.
Okay.
What's that funny? What's that
No
funny?
comment. No comment. No comment.
No,
It's
I want
funny.
to hear.
Nobody here. I hear
Huh?
you on that. It's because once again, when and we're talking about men's issues, and what we don't realize is how men treat their emotional safety,
Oh my gosh, you said
right?
something I
So
will
when you
never
spend
forget.
the
Yeah.
emotional sanctity, tell them. You tell them. You say.
Yeah. So he said something where when men fall in love, it's just a lot of emotional labor. It takes a lot of emotional labor from us. And I couldn't agree more. Man, it's crazy. I think one of the reasons why I'm extremely protective of my about my emotion is
Mhm.
because I wouldn't say it's a trauma response. I really don't think it's a trauma response. I just rather not. It's just one of those topic where the 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 topic doesn't interest me. So it's like I'll give you a really good example. So I don't if you speak about you know plants, I don't care if you speak about plants. It doesn't interest me. I just don't want to talk about that.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
It doesn't mean that oh because I don't want to speak about plants is because there's the traumatic response. No, I just don't I don't find it amusing. It's not amusing to me. So
Right.
it's the same thing. It's the same thing with speaking about my emotion. It's like, how did you feel today? It's like, well, I felt good. I ate pizza. What else did I do? I took a shower. I went for. Is I find that boring. Personally, to me, I find it boring. I find it boring. What I like to speak about, I love politics. I love
Right.
speaking about politics. I love speaking about psychology. I love speaking about chemistry. I
Mhm.
love speaking about I love speaking about those things. Those
Mhm.
things is just what gets my mind going.
Right.
Yeah, so I remember I was speaking to a girl, and then she said that she knew a filmmaker, Godard.
What?
Godard,
What? Huh? A filmmaker? What?
Godard. He's a
Oh, a
famous
filmmaker named Good. Okay, go on.
Godard. Yeah, he's a famous French filmmaker. And I
Right.
said, "Oh my gosh, no way! I mean, this guy died like
Hmm.
for some time now, and you know his films,
Hmm.
right? Things like that interest me, as
Hmm.
opposed to speaking about emotion. You know what I mean? But
So I
that's
get
just
you.
me,
I'm
though.
trying.
That's just
No,
me. Yeah.
and I understand that because I was also in the same space. The thing I would say to that, I was trying to think of an analogy. It's not quite crossing my mind, so I'll just have to kind of like dance around the idea and somehow arrive at a destination. Actually, that's probably a better way of wording it. I was watching Abba and Preach,
Okay.
and they were talking about how people will think like, "Oh, I'm a lone wolf," alpha male, sigma male, giga chad, whatever the new term is nowadays, right? I don't need no friends. I'm a G. Or you'll see with women, I don't need a man. I can pay for my own bills, etc., etc. And then the moment someone makes friends or finds a romantic relationship, whatever, you realize how much you needed that. Oh, I can see you. You'll realize how much you needed that. But
Yeah.
until you expose yourself to that thing, you won't realize how much you needed that thing. That's what I would say. So it's
Okay.
not to say like necessarily that you don't engage. I don't think you've ever been in a space for it to receive it. So you're not engaged in it. Right. Like it wasn't until like I had a female friend ask me like how I feel and things like that that I learned to actually value those conversations because I was like, I don't know. And until like I said, I did therapy, that's like now increase that, appreciation for that. But prior to that, I was like, feelings? Do I look like a bitch?
Yeah. No, but
Right.
remember, it's not speaking about feelings per se that I don't like. I don't like speaking about my feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I was not in tune to those things. You're looking, this is 34-year-old Bert. At one point, I was 24, 23, and I didn't know how to deal with those things. I didn't know how to process those things.
Yeah.
I was there. When I'm talking about these things, when it comes to anime, video games, comic books, we're talking about 86, son, husband, taking too much responsibility, being out of tune with your emotions, rationalizing your feelings, and thinking you're being logical. The reason I can talk about these things is because I've lived it. I've
Mhm.
lived this stuff, and some of the stuff I still do. I'm not any different than anybody else that's listening. I'm just talking about it and tying it into the stuff that we love. I'm no different. So I just have to take
Yeah.
the time and have to ask myself, okay, this is wrong. Why? How do you feel about this? I have to go through that process with myself because I've gotten the tools to do that I never had before. So that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. Like even like when I had a coworker pass away in a previous job I had, I did not know how to deal with it until I had a conversation with my therapist and we were talking about like I have issues around death. And the
Mm.
issues I have around death have to do with my dad having been sick and nearly died like twice in front of me. That's where those things come from. But I didn't know how to deal with those things. I was just like, oh, this thing makes me it puts me down. I can't be around in these hospital spaces. But I didn't know what the thing was until I went further in terms of how I feel and like my deeper feelings around it and not just my rationalization of it. So it takes time. And I would just say for any you or any of our audience members is don't rush yourself to be in those spaces either, but don't run from it. Walk. Just the same as we were giving the analogy of the landmine. Just walk into it. Because you'd be surprised, just like how we're talking about like women who say, I don't need no man, or men who are just like, I'm an alpha dog. I don't even need love, romantic
No,
love.
but what
Mhm,
I'm trying to say is when I say that, it doesn't stem from the idea of, oh, I'm red pill, or oh, I'm a man, I don't speak about my emotion,
mhm,
or oh, what ew, emotion. No, it doesn't stem from that. It stems
mhm.
from the fact that it doesn't get my mind going.
But that's what I mean.
You see what I'm
That's
saying?
exactly. But that's it. We're talking the same thing.
Like it doesn't arouse my mind.
You're right. I get you. You're right. It wouldn't. The
Yeah.
same way, but that's what I'm saying. Maybe come back to this episode, and or maybe even after this, we can have more of this conversation. But like, it's the same way as a very hyper successful woman saying she doesn't need a man. Like it literally doesn't do anything for her.
Not necessarily though.
Okay.
Not necessarily, because remember, when a woman say that is because they've been in an environment where they had to act like a man, where they had,
Not
you know,
quite. Not you're
well,
right. You're right
well,
in some cases, but that's why I wasn't necessarily talking about.
well, they
I'm not,
remember they're in a survivor flight mode, right?
once
So
again, sorry for jumping in. I'm not
yeah,
talking about. That's a better way of word it. Maybe people won't be upset with me saying this. I'm not talking about ghetto hood rats.
I
I'm talking about
understand.
like I'm talking about like hyper successful women who are like 6, 7 figures, right? Who can pay for like in the same bracket as my sister who's a doctor. Like those women who didn't necessarily grow up in the hood or have necessarily negative experience with men, but because they're able. So like we're also in a different era in the world right now where women are able to provide for themselves in ways that like only men could. And men are
Mhm.
also in a space where like we don't have like to fight some great war. So now we're allowed to talk about our feelings. Because before, like, if a war is happening, you don't have time to talk about your feelings, right? So
Yeah.
we're also in a different era for both sides and all sides in between. So I'm just specifically talking about like the very successful women who really can do everything for themselves. And so they don't really see the value of like a romantic relationship. Not so much
Now,
red
now,
pill
now,
and
now, now, let me just add to that. Yes,
Mhm,
sure, there's some aspect of that, but
mhm,
you have to understand you can't also deny evolution, right? So, for
mhm.
example, these women are hypergamous, right? Like
Okay.
they want to date, especially if you put in the hard work to
Mhm,
build yourself up to that extent. Now, I know there are
mhm,
some cases that a woman that's successful would date someone who's not as successful, but ideally,
mhm,
they'd
mhm.
want someone close to their level or
Or better.
higher
Right.
or better. Women, we don't care about that, right?
Right.
We don't really
Yeah.
care. In fact, we date down.
Yeah.
most, and most of the time, we make that majority
We
date,
want to like date to a
especially the
certain minimum
successful
standard. Mhm.
majority of successful men, they date down.
Yeah. You just want her
But
to be hot. But yeah, go on.
yeah,
Hot and
yeah,
submissive. But
yeah.
yeah, go on.
So what I'm saying is like the reason why I say it's different is because they're following an evolution that you can't just get rid of like that, and which is this concept of hypergamy, right?
Okay.
They want someone who is at their level or better, and it's
Hmm.
very hard to find a man like that in the 21st
Hmm.
century. It's
Right.
very hard. 6 foot, that meets all that
Yeah.
requirement. So it's like,
666, the devil.
yeah, 666. So now, so now they're thinking, wait a minute, I this is so hard. I can't get this. Like I didn't know it was gonna be hard like this.
Okay.
Let me
I
just say I don't
think
care about man.
okay. So I think
I might as well
so.
just not try.
Right. Okay, so you're
Wait,
talking about like how women will achieve to a certain point where they basically cannot achieve their what's the word um gender specific needs and urges. Like in the case of women would be hypergamy, and so because of that,
basically their type. Their type.
exactly their type. And so because they're not able to get their type in terms of their bracket of where they are, which is equal or better, they're just like, what's the point?
Why would I settle?
Right. So yes, those exist, but I'm not once again, that's
And
not
that's
the
and if you look at those videos of whenever you have this male, whenever you see someone with a mic, leave, run away because it's gonna be on
a
the
mic.
street. If you see someone on the street doing street interview with a mic,
Oh.
leave because it's gonna get messy, right? They're gonna ask you a lot of messy things. But what I'm trying to say is whenever you see those street interviews of a woman answering a question, oh, what would you like in a guy,
Mhm,
right? Man, 9 times out of 10 is like some unicorn. They're describing a unicorn, right?
mhm,
When we know their experience, they're probably not even, probably sleeping with those type of men. They're not
mhm,
sleeping with those type of men.
mhm,
But ideally, that is what they want,
mhm.
right? So what I'm trying to say is it's different with what I'm saying,
Mhm.
because what I'm trying to say is um I have those conversations. Whereas the
Mhm.
women, they're not trying those type of men. They're not having that experience of trying those type of men. But I'm still having those conversations about feelings.
Have you had
And
those
I
conversations?
have it all the time. Whenever you and I speak, I mean, we're speaking about it now, but
Mhm.
whenever you and I speak, whenever I speak with my friends, we're always speaking about feelings.
Mhm.
But and I've been doing this for the past 5 years or so, or 6 years or so,
Mhm.
but it just doesn't get me interested. Like the example I gave you,
Mhm.
if someone was to speak about plants, I would entertain the conversation, but it would
Mhm.
do nothing
You
to my
wouldn't be
mind.
engaged.
Yeah, it would do nothing to my mind. So
Okay.
it's like the same. It's like the it's no different than the subject of feelings, because
Right.
I see it as just another topic. I'm not speaking about addressing the trauma. That's a different topic. I'm
Right.
speaking about the conversation itself, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. So
Right.
the conversation itself about feelings, like, oh, how do people feel, or how do you feel, or whatever the case may be, it does nothing to my mind, man. It does nothing.
And have you had those conversations with the opposite sex in a safe space?
All the and the same. No, I have those conversations all the time.
And they don't weaponize what you say against you, and they actually inquire.
They inquire. I had some cases where they weaponize it,
Okay.
but
So
what I'm saying, yeah,
no, go on.
what what I'm saying, even when I did speak, I'll give you a really good example. So the last person again, I told you about this, right? The last person I spoke to
Mhm.
actually created that space for me.
Mhm.
Literally, this is why I was attached,
Mhm.
because this is the first time I've ever had that space of speaking about my feelings.
Mhm.
But let me tell you this, I told that person that
Mhm.
I don't like to, even though I had this wonderful, and I truly did. I truly did.
Mhm.
This is why I got attached so fast.
Mhm.
Even though I did have that, and I
Mhm.
won't lie to you, it felt amazing. It felt
Mhm.
amazing having that.
Mhm.
I still told her I
Mhm.
don't like to speak about it
Mm.
because it doesn't stimulate my mind.
Mm.
And then I said, and then of course to what she said, well, I'm not really versed in politics and I feel self-conscious about this
Mhm.
because you love to speak about politics. You rather speak
Mhm.
about that. And I
Mhm.
said, yeah. So again, the way I see it is just it's just not a subject that interests me.
Mhm.
I'll speak about it if,
Mhm.
especially if you hold it dearly and very important,
Mhm.
I'll speak about it. But
Mhm.
I would rather speak about like politics. Yeah, mostly politics, mainly politics. I'll be honest.
Oh, that's cap because you also like talking about anime. But um
Absolutely.
I would say there's more to explore there, but I can understand where you're coming from. And I know what that's like. I can definitely understand that. That's the only thing I would say. But once again, I understand where you're coming from. That's the main thing I would say. I understand where you're coming from in terms of
Okay.
how disengaging that could be.
Yep.
For me personally, I don't really go into what ifs and
Mhm.
speculations.
What do you think? Now, if I was to ask your opinion, do you think this ties with the topic of this conversation where because men take on so much responsibility, because in my life, of course, I am taking quite a few responsibility.
Hmm.
Do you think that now I'm not asking you to be a therapist or it's just a speculation,
I
right?
can't be, but go on. Hmm.
It's just a speculation. So
Hmm.
do you think that this probably ties down to the effect that men, because the reason why you're not really interested is because you're taking too much responsibility and there's a connection there? Do you think there's a connection there?
Yeah, it's just like how Shin, when Frederico was just like, "What do you?" Before they faced the morph, remember when they're in the bunker and
Yeah.
they're sleeping over, and he was just like, "I'm just a ghost. There's nothing worth finding about me." Once again, having that emotional, vulnerable conversation, he immediately shut Frederica down because is this not worth having? Is this a lot easier to deny myself? Because that's right. I had to do this whole time,
Hmm.
and now you're telling me to undo this. What's the point? I'm undeserving of that, so I'm just gonna not do it. That's where that's why I say it's good to kind of explore those things because it was also the same thing for me too. I wasn't really in a safe space. I remember even a story of a little excerpt of like some of my past life when I used to be in the world of dating. I remember X said that The only time she likes hearing me talk about fighting games and video games is because it puts her to sleep. It's funny.
I'm so
Real.
sorry,
It's fine.
man.
But this also goes into how, like, even for us
Listen,
men,
listen. I laugh because you have really good comedic timing.
thank you. Thank you.
You
But the
have a
other thing
really
I would,
good timing.
hey, man.
It's like you say it and then you pause, like you
Yeah,
waited
just let
for
people
waited
digest.
for a
Yeah, gotta let people
reaction.
digest. But the other thing I would say that in terms of, and this is not attacking you for laughing, but even for
Yeah.
us men, we don't even value each other's emotions and feelings.
Oh,
We haven't
absolutely.
learned
Yeah.
to do that. So as much as we're complaining about women weaponizing and using our feelings, we're doing the same thing, right? We laugh at each other when we're going to something. We see a guy getting beat up by a woman, like, oh, look at this loser, look at the little bitch getting beat up by his girlfriend. But the moment he hits back, oh, what's wrong with you? So even for us men, we also have not been socialized and have the articulation to even be advocates for one another. So we can't even blame women for all our stuff.
Well.
Like,
Okay. So I think it definitely just another. We're just compartmentalizing, right? That's simply it. That's really what it is. I think
and
that
that's
because
responsibility. That's what it means to be responsible. Sorry for jumping in there. I think you make
yeah,
a really good point. When you have to be responsible, you have to take a leadership role, you have to learn to compartmentalize. And
the,
sometimes when you're taking too much responsibility, sometimes you're just compartmentalizing too much to the point where you forgot there's a box in the back corner over there,
yeah.
right? You never even realized, you forgot about it. You've solved it off for so long because you had to prioritize other people's stuff, their own property, that you forgot that there's this box in the corner and you need to open that shit.
I look at, for example, Sheen's experience. He had to be an Undertaker, Reaper, also a leader, kill all the legions, at least
Mhm.
majority of the legions.
Push back the first great offensive.
Push exactly. So always have to be at the front line,
Yep.
and then at the same time have enough emotional security where he doesn't lose his head because people rely on him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I look at his experience and I can relate that to the male experience because whenever you have these Q&A,
Mm-hmm.
right, asking
Q&A.
these Q&A, questions and answered,
Okay.
whenever they ask these personality, whether it's the Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro, whenever they ask them,
Mm.
right, or even for example the Tate brothers, whenever they ask them a question, and oh, David Goggins, even David Goggins, whenever they
No,
ask him a question
mm-hmm.
and they say something like, hey, my wife just left me,
Mm-hmm.
right? They ask him that question, what they say is something to the effect of, okay,
Compartmentalize it.
okay, cool,
Mm-hmm.
wife, so what, move on,
Mm-hmm.
move on, essentially saying you're a man,
Oh,
these
David
things are going to
Goggins. Yeah.
happen. Yeah, David Goggins, you're a man, you need to move on. Yes, process those emotion, but there isn't really a lot of importance
Mm-hmm.
on internalizing those emotion.
And
Is
dealing
more
with them.
and dealing with
Mhm.
them is more.
Shelve
they're,
it.
they're more, yeah, mostly what they're trying to say, this is the point of the message, is move on,
Mm-hmm.
who cares,
Mm-hmm.
and get over it,
Yep.
because you are a man and you
Mm-hmm.
have a duty. Go be fit, be successful, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be your revenge. Of course there's a flawed way of thinking about that, in
Mm-hmm.
that even if you are successful,
Mm-hmm.
right, and you do have your ideal body shape,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, the amount of depressed people I have seen,
Preach.
the amount of
Talk that talk.
depressed people I have seen, and this is not exceptions, because people are going to be like, oh, you're just arguing the exception. No, these are not exceptions. You go to
These
the
are none.
gym,
Mm-hmm.
you go to the gym, you're going to find these. The gym is a perfect
If you
reminder
could tell
of
people how often you
depressed.
work out, I think people also should know to give them context.
How often I work out?
Mm-hmm. To give them context.
Oh, I work out every day,
There you go. Go on.
every single day.
And when you're
But
seeing these people, mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say is, the gym is literally a place for depressed people.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds weird to say,
Mm-hmm.
but have you seen those comments where they would say, you'll watch a video of someone who just went through a heartbreak, and then
Mm-hmm.
all these comments are saying, "See you at the gym at 9 a.m."
Bro, I seen that so many times on Instagram and YouTube. I'm like,
Oh
damn,
my
bro.
god!
That's what we're doing.
Everybody, anyone I speak to at the gym, they say, "Man, I just got out this relationship," and I'm just like, "Wait, are we all living the same life?"
We are. Yeah.
Right? It's, I mean, again, yes, be fit. That's really important. Be
Agreed.
successful because, of course, you want to make your life easier and you want to have a lot of access to other things
And also just being healthy.
and just being healthy. Yeah, but don't just disregard your feeling, which is why I vowed and I made a promise to myself. I said, you know what? Even if God tomorrow, I snap my finger, God tomorrow, God tomorrow sends me the woman of my dream. I
Hmm.
said, no, you know what? I want to first understand my inner child.
Hmm.
And when I could get a little bit of understanding of that, then I'll be ready for the dating world. But
Hmm.
I gotta first take care of this.
Yeah, no, and we're on the same page. We'll wrap it up just now, but these are some of my, and I'm glad you brought that up because people would probably want to know what I think of Andrew Tate. We're gonna talk more extensively about him sooner than later, but I think he's brought some good to men, but there are some problematic things I do have issues with him on, like specifically how like it's great for a man to have trauma. He says something along the lines of that, and I'm like, no, trauma leaves you where you were. So if you were 12, where that trauma happened, if you experience anything similar to that, you're gonna go back to reacting like how you were when you were 12.
Mm,
So no, maybe if anything, I think if you've been through the experiences in life and you're seasoned, like a woman like the salt and pepper hair, like people can't see, but I have a lot of gray hairs. Women like men with experience and knowledge,
yeah,
right, to know how to navigate life. But why would you want to be with a man that has PTSD? Like,
true,
why would a woman want that?
true.
You can't sleep at night, like jumping under the bed because you have PTSD. Why? How is that sexy?
That's
Right? So
anxious. That's really anxious for the woman, actually.
exactly, you're stressing her out. Oh, that's sexy for her? No, right? Oh, and so what? You have PTSD, so just go to the gym and work it off. It doesn't go away like that. Like, go get some help. Even after Tate spoke ill of therapy, I'm like, no, get some help, bro. Heal. You deserve to. So that's some of the issues I have with him. Um, but some of the other stuff, like exercise, combat sports, like I do agree with some of those things. But there's other issues where I'm just like, when it comes to the mental of men, I think he misses a lot of points when it comes to that, personally. But yeah. So I think I don't want this episode to get too long before I have to cut up into two parts. Like I've already had to do that once.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Jordan, what are your thoughts of 86? Yeah, and I'll share my own. What are your thoughts of this series? Did you like it? Did you love it?
Well, you know I like my politics, right?
Facts, especially
I'm
the
I'm
second half.
listen, I'm not really big into the whole mecha
Hmm.
stuff,
Even though
but
you love Code Geass, but go on. I have to get you on that one.
yeah, no, but remember, it's really the main character that I like,
Mhm,
right? So
for sure.
I can look past that. I can look past that. But one thing I like about 86 is that it speaks, if you really pay attention, of course, to our society, it
Hmm.
speaks to exactly how it's always been. It's
Hmm.
always been the concept of, you know, of course, racism, economic disparity,
Hmm.
everything like that, right? So
Hmm.
it just presents it in a different way.
Palatable, I would say.
Yeah. So, for example, the
Very
San, again, I,
digestible.
I can't I can't say the name of that country, Mangelina,
Magnolia.
Mongolia, Mango.
Magnolia. You said
Ma-
Mongolia.
I was
Now
gonna say
Genghis Khan.
Mangola.
Now Genghis Khan. Magnolia.
Yeah.
It's a flower.
Like, for example, you could look at that country and you could just think that, okay, that's just Japan,
Mm,
right? That country's just Japan, because I
fair.
think the figure is something like 97% of that country are Japanese,
Probably.
and
Sounds
or
about right.
something like that, right? So
Mhm.
basically, just overwhelmingly, majority of the person in Japan are just Japanese.
Right.
So you can just look at that country and be like, oh, yeah, that's Japan.
Hmm.
And then you look at the Jihad Federation, you could think of probably perhaps Canada, because we did have the 1970 Multiculturalism Act, which
Mm-hmm.
allowed just a whole bunch. It's just a melting pot, right?
It's the reason why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. Having this conversation
Mm-hmm.
in a foreign language that it is not our native language, right?
Facts. Facts.
I mean, look at it, right? For example, our phone is from where China, probably
Mm-hmm.
assembled.
With
Where was it?
parts from
Assembled
Congo.
California or Congo? Yeah. So China, Congo. We're speaking in English,
Yep.
right? We're eating Jamaican food,
Preach, brother. Preach.
right? So this is just a whole melting pot. Like it's truly a diverse country here.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's true.
then we had that. I like the show because it was just extreme political.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it. It boils down to that. And it was really political, but it was able to also mix in, how do I say, some interesting element of psychology that
Mm-hmm.
I can appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like speaking about my emotion, but if someone speaks about their emotion, I'm totally fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna listen to you. I
Mm-hmm.
don't mind listening. And I actually really like listening to Shin and The Last Impress and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's background story. I really like listening to that.
Yeah, no,
So I
they.
was able to
Mhm.
mix both of that in a way that brought a beautiful story.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you know what I also liked? I also liked how it didn't focus too much on romance.
Yes, it was an undertone, but it wasn't explicitly emphasized throughout the series. But like even like when Deb and I are watching it, she was like, "Are Shin and Lena gonna meet?" Like everyone's wondering
I
in the last episode,
I
like we're all just
like
like, "Are they
that.
gonna
I
meet?"
like that.
But at the same time, it's not that you want them to meet, but there's so much other stuff going on. But you're just like, "Oh, Lena's alive. Oh my gosh, are they gonna meet? Are they gonna meet? Are they gonna meet before the end of the episode?"
I
And when
mean,
you
the
see, you're like,
entire
"Yes,
civilization is about to be wiped out, and you're
right."
worrying about whether or not they're gonna. But what I liked about it is because when they did meet, it was
Hmm.
how long? Only 30 seconds,
Yep, and that was it. Or
and that
like I'll
was
probably
it.
say 2 minutes. Yep.
And you know what? I was actually satisfied with that.
Yeah, same.
I was
Everyone
satisfied.
got
I'm like,
catharsis.
what Western people tend to do is first episode they're fucking right. First episode they're having sex, and then after that they work on the plot, and then we don't really value the romantic relationship as much because it's like, I mean, they did everything, right? They went through
Mhm.
the entire emotional aspect. It's like,
Yep.
what other thing are we waiting about? We could care less about really having kids because who's gonna wait 9 months in a movie
Mhm.
that's only an hour, right?
Facts.
And
Yep.
plus, that only suggests that it's gonna be extremely complacent. It's gonna
Mhm.
be boring because when you have a kid, you have to settle down.
Mhm.
So, boom, first episode they have sex, and then what, right?
Yeah.
But whereas what the Eastern people tend to do is Japanese is they build on the relationship,
Mhm.
on the emotion, and they take you on a ride.
Yeah, no, you're
And I
right.
and I like that. I like that. So even if, for example, Sheen and Lena were to do
Mhm.
it, I'll
Mm.
be like, that wasn't necessary.
Mhm.
You know what I
Well, it
mean?
was in the Japanese culture in terms of how gender dynamics are, especially in a heteronormative context. Like you're not supposed to like be too explicit in terms of how you feel. So and be too vocal about certain things. You're supposed to like what's what I'm looking for. You're not supposed to cause a commotion. Even within Asian culture, you're supposed to be it's expected to be more demure, more quiet, more docile and just generally more agreeable. You don't want to cause problems. That's the worst that you could do in Japan is to cause problems for your family, you and your family. Very similar to African culture, except African culture you're allowed to also still be bombastic in certain ways. So
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, for me, it was like this fresh, new. It was like it was a bit refreshing, only because in the West everything is sexualized,
yeah, no, that's fair.
everything,
That's
and
fair.
very quickly. So when you have things like that, I can definitely appreciate the beauty. I like it.
For sure. Yeah, and for me,
What was your favorite part,
my favorite part,
or what
I
did
would
you
say the
like
first half
about?
of the series. I liked how because a lot of series, and this has been the struggle with the some of the comic book industry, especially when it comes to cinema, is that the way it tackles things like race, gender issues, whatever, is that it really puts it in your face and kind of wags their finger. Oh, shouldn't be racist, shouldn't be sexist, because that makes you a bad person. The thing I loved about 86 is the way it tackled systemic discrimination. Because I could say with racism, but you could really put it into different categories outside of racism, but just systemic issues. Like, for instance, Henrietta, Lena's best friend. You saw how she wasn't explicitly discriminatory to the colors. She just saw, like, there's no point of me doing anything because I failed to speak up for my friend, and I called him a racial slur because of all the pressure I was going under as an 8-year-old. And you can't really blame an 8-year-old for saying a racial slur, especially when they're being pressured by their friends to do so. Otherwise, they're going to be ostracized by the rest of their community. And so she felt horrible.
That's what she was taught. She was
Exactly.
taught
And so she became apathetic to their struggles because it was a lot easier to just go with it than to fight against the tide. And so that's how we have these systemic issues. I love how I just did that, not just like, oh, they're racist because they're racist and they're racist because they're bad. I hate those sort of stories. It even reminds me of a movie that my wife and I went to go see at TIFF. It was called Sirai. It's based in Burundi. It was a movie based in Burundi, and like you saw how like if any of the men, like some of the malicious men who are doing horrible things to women, you saw how they had like a family that even though they pillaged a whole community in the name of quote unquote Islam, they still had a family that where they pillaged, they brought it to their family, as opposed to, which we'll probably talk about when we have a certain guest on, a certain professor, The Woman King. I have a lot of issues with that movie, where one of the things I didn't like about it was, first of all the men are black men, and all the men doing horrible things are black men, and they're just doing evil things to women because, you know, we're looking, us black men, we're just these impending patriarchs waiting to oppress our women, that we're just looking at the time, and once we have the rights of white men, we're like, oh, it's oppression time. Ready, ladies? Time to get oppressed, because that's what we want to do to our women who've, you know, we've cultivated our countries with. We've had to work together to build our families, but the moment we get the white man's power, the 1%, we are oppressing our women. That's what we're that's all we're waiting for. We're mimetic and we're just trying to copy them.
Well, this is very interesting. I definitely want to get your opinion on this.
Okay, what's the question? And then that'll determine if we're going to answer it now or next episode.
Why is it that when men get into position of power, especially our men, because we're not exempt from it, right? We're part of that group.
Go on.
Why is it that they feel the need to oppress our women?
It's a different conversation. We'll save it for
no. If you can summarize it, because you went into that territory.
I'm just touching on things. Then you can save it for it, because we actually going to be. So we are actually
that is interesting. I really want to know that.
And I'm sure our guests want to know. So the thing is,
the viewers are listening right there. They're like, yeah, Eb, answer it.
I'm not trying to make this 3 hours. The thing I know you want me to. So here's the thing.
No. I just want you to make it 2 minutes or 3 minutes to answer.
For our listeners, we're also going to have a part 2 on 86. So for this episode, we wanted to talk about Shin. The next episode, we're going to be talking about the deuteragonist of the series, Lena. So we're going to be talking more about systemic issues. But really and truly, to answer your question, it doesn't really happen. If you're talking about black men specifically, it doesn't really happen. Another point to add is power just makes you more of power, opportunity, whatever makes you more of who you are. That's what things tend to come down to. If you are already abusive to others, you'll just become more of that. If you're already a giver, you'll give more to others. If you're already irresponsible, you become even more irresponsible. If you really want to see who someone is, give them a mask. So yeah, that's where a lot of these things. To wrap it up, that's one of the things I loved about the series, the way it addressed systemic discrimination and humanized everybody, implicitly playing a role in that without saying these people are bad because they're discriminatory. I loved how the series did that. Some people didn't like it, but I loved how they approached that. So that's what I would say about the series. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I don't know if you have any closing remarks, Jordan. I know you want me to extrapolate more in terms of the systemic issues, but like I said, we can talk about. We're going to talk about that more in our next episode.
No, I'm just thinking about one of my favorite scene, because when you brought that up, I'm just thinking about one of my favorite scene. I don't know if we have the time to speak about it. But I'm just thinking about one of the most interesting scene for me in the show. That was it.
Does it tie into our next episode with Lena? The discriminatory stuff?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, it does. It does.
Save
We
it.
can speak about it. Yeah,
We need to
can
give
speak
people.
about
We need to get people entice them. We must entice them now. We must leave droplets of pepper soup for them.
it.
Drops of goat meat, so that they where's this goat meat coming from? I must come
Yeah.
and chase it, and then we'll lead them to the next episode, and we will give them a bowl of pepper soup with goat meat. Let them eat well. We'll put some fufu on the side. Eh?
For everybody for everybody who's wondering, Eb he's not really Nigerian. He's just a Canadian guy.
Hey, you're trying to cause problems. Yeah, so
I'm
anyway,
joking.
no, I'm not bothered. So thank you guys for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We're out of here.
Peace.
Peace. Oops, wrong button.